October 17, 1973. As the oil crisis sent gas prices skyrocketing, Detroit buried the American muscle car dream. Today, 52 years later, one man faces a similar failure. Jack Reynolds watches his teenage daughter Lauren count their remaining bills at the kitchen table. Each paper flipped sounds like another verdict on his 7 months of unemployment. At 42, with a mechanical engineering degree and 15 years of experience, Jack has become obsolete in an industry hungry for younger, cheaper faces. $43 for groceries this week, Lauren says without looking up, her 16-year-old voice echoing coldly in the silent kitchen. Jack has never felt more useless, until a call comes from a lawyer's office about his estranged Uncle Victor, who just left him what the whole town calls a junkyard. The October rain taps against the kitchen window of the modest suburban home Jack can barely afford. Morning light filters through the clouds, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Lauren sits cross-legged at the table, methodically sorting bills into 3 piles: urgent, overdue, and impossible. Her dark hair falls across her face as she works, hiding the expression Jack knows too well: disappointment mixed with resignation. "Electric bills due tomorrow," she says, her voice carrying the matter-of-fact tone that replaced her laughter years ago. "We can cover it if we skip groceries until payday." Jack watches his daughter's careful fingers arrange the papers, each movement deliberate. When had she become the adult in their relationship? When had he stopped being the one who solved problems and started being the one who created them? The weight of failure presses down on his shoulders like a physical burden, heavier with each passing day of unemployment. "I've got that interview at Grayson Engineering on Wednesday," he offers, though they both know it's his 16th interview in 7 months. Each rejection has chipped away another piece of his confidence, leaving him feeling like a broken machine whose parts no longer fit together properly. The engineering world that once welcomed his expertise now views him as a relic, too expensive and too set in his ways. Lauren finally looks up, her green eyes so much like Diana's, holding a weariness no teenager should carry. "Dad, you don't have to pretend with me anymore. We both know how these interviews go. They take one look at your resume, see your age, and decide they'd rather hire someone straight out of college for half the salary." The words sting because they're true. At 42, Jack has discovered that being unemployed for more than a few months marks you as damaged goods in the engineering world. Younger candidates with fresh degrees command lower salaries and bring enthusiasm he can no longer muster. The industry he devoted his career to has moved on without him, leaving him behind like yesterday's technology. The kitchen falls silent except for the persistent drip of their leaky faucet, another repair they can't afford. Water collects in the stained basin with a rhythm that marks the passing seconds. On the refrigerator, beneath a magnet shaped like a wrench, hangs Lauren's report card from last semester. Straight A's in advanced mathematics and physics, just like her mother. The scholarship offers have started coming in, but even with financial aid, college expenses loom like an insurmountable mountain. Diana. Even 3 years after the cancer took her, Jack still reaches for her side of the bed each morning, still catches himself buying her favorite cereal at the store. She'd been the steady one, the practical dreamer who believed in fixing things rather than replacing them. She would have known how to navigate this financial disaster without losing Lauren's respect in the process. Without her, Jack feels like he's constantly operating without a blueprint, trying to build something stable from fragments. "Remember when Mom used to fix the Chevy's carburetor herself?" Lauren asked suddenly, as if reading his thoughts. "She'd always tell you to hand her the wrong tool first, just so she could roll her eyes and say engineers never learn. Then she'd grab exactly what she needed and have it running in 20 minutes. Jack smiles despite himself. "She claimed it was because I was overthinking the simple stuff, said I was too busy seeing the forest to notice the tree right in front of me. Your mother could look at an engine and just understand it, like she could hear what was wrong. She was always finding simple solutions to complicated problems," Lauren says softly, then returns to sorting bills with renewed focus. The brief moment of connection fades as quickly as it appeared, submerged beneath the cold reality of their circumstances. The phone rings, interrupting the moment. Jack glances at the caller ID, Westlake and Associates, attorneys at law. Probably another debt collector using a law firm's name to sound official. He's learned to recognize their tactics, the polite voices that quickly turn insistent, demanding payments he simply cannot make. With a sigh, he answers, preparing his usual explanation about waiting for employment. "Mr. Reynolds?" The voice on the other end is professional but warm, lacking the predatory edge he's come to expect. "This is Patricia Westlake. I'm calling about your Uncle Victor Medina's estate. I believe you received my letter last week." Jack had received the letter, but hadn't opened it yet. Mail these days brings only bad news. Overdue notices, rejection letters, or worse. The envelope from Westlake and Associates had been tossed onto the growing pile of correspondence he couldn't bear to face. "I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to read it thoroughly. I understand these matters can be overwhelming. Your Uncle Victor Medina passed away 2 weeks ago, and you're named as the primary beneficiary of his estate. There's a property that requires your immediate attention." Uncle Victor. Jack's memory of his mother's younger brother is fuzzy at best. A quiet man who appeared at family gatherings like a ghost, always lingering at the edges of conversations, never staying long enough to become familiar. His weathered face and calloused hands spoke of a life of manual labor, though Jack remembers his mother once mentioning that Victor had been brilliant in his own way. Jack can't remember having a real conversation with him in 20 years. "What kind of property?" Lauren has stopped sorting bills and is listening intently, her expression cautiously hopeful. Even bad news is a welcome distraction from their daily struggles. "It's a garage and automotive repair facility on Sycamore Street, along with a small residential lot. The building requires significant repairs, and there are some environmental concerns about materials stored on the property. Your uncle had no immediate family, and your siblings have already declined their inheritance rights due to the property's condition and potential liabilities." Of course they had. Jack's older brother, Thomas, and sister Karen had both built successful careers in finance. They wouldn't want to deal with a rundown garage and whatever problems came with it. That's why it landed on Jack, the brother who currently had nothing to lose. The family disappointment, as Thomas had not so subtly implied during their last conversation. "I'll need to see the property before making any decisions," Jack says, trying to sound more decisive than he feels. Another burden is the last thing they need, but he can't afford to dismiss any possibility, however remote, of improving their situation. "Certainly, I should mention that the city has been pressuring for the property to be cleaned up or demolished. The neighbors have filed several complaints about its appearance. I can meet you there tomorrow morning if you'd like." After hanging up, Jack finds Lauren watching him with cautious curiosity, a spark of interest breaking through her usual resignation. "Uncle Victor died?" "Apparently, I barely knew him, to be honest. He left me some kind of garage, but it sounds like it's more trouble than it's worth. Environmental concerns, repairs needed, probably just another financial sinkhole." Lauren pulls out her phone and begins typing with the rapid efficiency of her generation. Within minutes, she's found the property on Street View. The image shows a squat industrial building with peeling paint, broken windows, and a yard full of what looks like scrap metal and abandoned machinery. Chain link fence surrounds the perimeter, sections of it collapsed or missing entirely. The whole property has an air of neglect and decay. "Thomas and Karen passed on this?" she asked, showing him the screen. "Smart of them, probably. Look at that place. It's a tetanus factory." But Lauren is studying the image more carefully, zooming in on different sections with growing interest. "Dad, look at the size of that building and see these shapes in the yard. Some of this stuff looks like it might actually be cars under all those tarps and rust. Pretty big ones, too. Classics, maybe?" Jack looks closer. She's right. Beneath the weathered covers and accumulated debris, there are definitely vehicles scattered throughout the property. Old ones by the look of their shapes, wide bodies and long hoods that speak of an era before fuel efficiency became the driving force in automotive design. "Even if they are cars, Lauren, look at the condition of everything. This place is what people politely call a fixer-upper and honestly call a money pit. We'd need thousands just to make it structurally sound, and who knows what kind of chemical cleanup might be required." "Maybe," she says, but her voice carries the first note of genuine interest he's heard in months. "Or maybe Uncle Victor was one of those collector types who like to hide treasures in plain sight. You know, like those guys on the restoration shows who keep million-dollar cars under dusty tarps in rural barns. Jack wants to dismiss the idea as teenage fantasy, but something about her enthusiasm stops him. It's been so long since he's seen Lauren excited about anything. And who knows, sometimes inheritance surprises did happen, just not to people like them. I guess we'll find out tomorrow, he says, tempering his response. But don't get your hopes up. People like us don't suddenly inherit hidden fortunes. The next morning, Jack and Lauren drive across town to Sycamore Street, following Patricia Westlake's silver sedan. The neighborhood has seen better days, a mix of small industrial buildings and aging residential properties. The kind of area where people mind their own business and don't ask too many questions. Factories that once employed hundreds now stand empty, their parking lots cracked with weeds pushing through the asphalt. It's a familiar sight in towns across America, the slow decay of manufacturing replaced by nothing. The garage looks worse in person than in the photos. The main building is constructed of concrete blocks painted an industrial green that has faded to the color of old moss. Several windows are boarded up, and the roll-up bay doors sag on their tracks like tired eyelids. A chain-link fence surrounds the property, though sections have been cut or have fallen over entirely. The yard is a maze of shapes under weathered tarps, interspersed with rusting machinery parts and stacks of materials that might once have had purpose. Well, Patricia Westlake says diplomatically as they park, your uncle certainly valued his privacy. She's dressed too formally for this environment, her tailored suit and polished shoes marking her as an outsider in this working-class neighborhood. She retrieves a thick folder of documents and a ring of keys from her car. Lauren walks to the fence line, peering through the gaps at the covered shapes scattered throughout the yard. Despite the property's condition, her expression is animated with curiosity. How long did he own this place? According to the records, about 35 years. He purchased it from a trucking company that went out of business in the late 80s. The neighbors say he kept to himself, worked mostly at night, and rarely had visitors. The city inspector reports that he was, let's say, minimally cooperative with code enforcement efforts. As Patricia unlocks the main building and begins explaining the legal details of the inheritance, Jack finds himself drawn to one particular covered shape near the back of the yard. Something about its proportions looks familiar, though he can't place why. The silhouette suggests a sports car of some kind, but larger than modern designs. His engineering mind automatically calculates dimensions, comparing them to vehicles he knows. The tarp covering it is secured with bungee cords and had probably been white once, though years of weather have turned it gray-green with patches of black mold. The building has good bones, Patricia is saying somewhere behind him, but it needs a new roof, updated electrical, and environmental testing for any automotive chemicals that might have been stored improperly. The residential portion is small but serviceable, assuming the plumbing still functions. Jack half listens, still staring at the covered shape. Lauren has noticed his distraction and followed his gaze, her own curiosity piqued. "Want to look under there?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying an excitement he hasn't heard since Diana's diagnosis changed everything. Before he can answer, she's already ducking through a gap in the fence and making her way across the yard, navigating around debris with the nimbleness of youth. Jack follows more cautiously, aware of tetanus risks and unstable footing. By the time he reaches her, she's already working at the bungee cords, her nimble fingers making quick work of the weathered elastic that secures the tarp. "Lauren, be careful. We don't know what's under there. Could be anything from scrap metal to a nest of raccoons." She ignores him, focused on her task with an intensity that reminds him painfully of Diana in her workshop. The tarp comes away in sections, revealing first a chrome bumper that gleams despite the dust, then distinctive twin racing stripes emerging from beneath years of grime, and finally the unmistakable silhouette of a classic muscle car that stops Jack's breath in his throat. "Dad," Lauren whispers, stepping back as the last section of tarp falls away. "I think we need to have a longer conversation with Uncle Victor's lawyer." As Jack stares at the pristine 1967 Shelby GT500 Super Snake nestled in this forgotten corner of the world, he feels something he hasn't experienced in months. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, the blueprint for his life isn't finished after all. The car sits like a time capsule, its lines representing everything American automotive excellence once stood for: power, freedom, engineering uninhibited by compromise. The 1967 Shelby GT500 Super Snake sits before them like a sleeping giant, its Wimbledon white paint gleaming beneath decades of careful preservation. The legendary twin blue racing stripes run the length of the vehicle, as vibrant as the day they were painted. Jack has seen pictures of these cars in magazines and documentaries, but holding the keys in his trembling hands feels surreal. This isn't just any muscle car. This is automotive royalty, one of only two ever built, according to the enthusiast magazines he used to read before life's pressures pushed such indulgences aside. "Dad, are you seeing this?" Lauren's voice carries a reverence he hasn't heard since she was little, discovering something magical for the first time. She circles the vehicle slowly, her fingers hovering just above the surface as if afraid direct contact might make it disappear. This is this is like finding a unicorn. These don't exist anymore. They were all supposed to be destroyed or sitting in museums. Patricia Westlake approaches cautiously, her professional composure cracking as she takes in the vehicle's immaculate condition. "Your uncle never mentioned anything about collector cars in our meetings. I assumed the covered vehicles were just old projects or scrap. This is unexpected." She makes a note in her folder, likely already calculating how this discovery changes the estate's value. Jack circles the Shelby slowly, noting details that speak of meticulous care: the engine bay spotless beneath its hood, chrome components polished to mirror finish, even the tires properly inflated and showing minimal wear despite their obvious age. Someone had loved this machine with a devotion that bordered on reverence. Each detail, from the perfectly aligned hood scoop to the pristine interior visible through the windows, speaks of preservation beyond mere collecting. This was stewardship of history. "The paperwork," he says suddenly, the engineer in him demanding verification before emotion takes over. "There has to be documentation, registration, something that proves ownership and authenticity. A car like this would have a detailed history, maintenance records, provenance." Lauren is already exploring the car's interior, running her fingers along the original black vinyl seats that show no cracks or wear. The dashboard gleams with analog gauges and the simple controls of a pre-digital era. "Dad, look at this." She holds up a leather portfolio that had been tucked behind the driver's seat, protected from light and moisture. Inside are photographs, registration documents, and what appears to be a detailed maintenance log spanning decades, each entry written in the same precise handwriting. The photographs tell a story Jack hadn't expected. Uncle Victor, looking 20 years younger, standing beside the Shelby at various car shows and racing events. In one image, he wears a racing suit and holds a trophy, grinning beside the car in what looks like a winner's circle. Other photos show different vehicles, classics Jack doesn't recognize, but which clearly belong to the same careful owner. "He was a racer," Lauren says, studying a photograph of Victor behind the wheel, his face intense with concentration as he navigates what looks like a professional track. The image contradicts everything Jack thought he knew about his reclusive uncle. "Look at his expression here. He knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't just a hobby." Patricia examines the registration documents with professional thoroughness. These appear legitimate. The title is clear, "In your uncle's name since 1978. If this vehicle is authentic, and it certainly appears to be, we're looking at something quite valuable. The Shelby GT500 Super Snake is among the most sought-after collector cars in existence. Jack's engineering mind kicks in, the analytical part of him that has been dormant for months suddenly awakening. We need to verify everything: authenticity, condition, market value. There are experts who specialize in documenting rare vehicles like this. This could change our entire situation. His thoughts race ahead, calculating possibilities. A car like this at auction could potentially bring 7 figures, maybe more to the right collector. Or it could be too good to be true, Lauren says, though her tone suggests she hopes otherwise. Her eyes scan the yard, taking in the other covered shapes with new appreciation. "Dad, what if there are more? What if Uncle Victor was collecting cars this whole time and nobody knew? What if this whole junkyard is actually full of classics?" The possibility hangs in the air like electricity before a storm. Jack looks across the cluttered yard, seeing the covered shapes with new eyes. Where before he'd seen junk and problems, now he sees potential. Each tarp might hide another treasure, another piece of Uncle Victor's secret life. The scattered parts that had seemed like refuse could be rare components for restoration projects. The stacked materials might be valuable new old stock items that collectors would pay premium prices to acquire. We should look at everything, he decides, his voice stronger than it's been in months. Systematically document what we find before making any decisions or announcements. If there are more vehicles like this, we need to secure the property immediately. They spend the next hour uncovering vehicles with the methodical precision of archaeologists excavating a royal tomb. Each discovery brings new surprises. A 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda in pristine plum-crazy purple, its hemispherical engine compartment detailed to factory specifications. A 1969 Dodge Daytona with its original 426 Hemi engine and distinctive rear wing intact. A car so rare that most enthusiasts only ever see them in museums. A 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge that looks like it just rolled off the showroom floor, its carousel red paint scheme vibrant under the autumn sunlight. Lauren keeps a running list on her phone, photographing each vehicle and its documentation with careful attention to detail. Her excitement grows with each discovery, and Jack watches his daughter transform before his eyes. The sullen teenager who counted grocery money has been replaced by an engaged young woman with bright eyes and animated gestures. She moves between the cars with growing confidence, her natural technical aptitude allowing her to recognize significant details. This is incredible, Dad. Do you realize what we're looking at here? These aren't just old cars. They're pieces of automotive history. Some of these models are so rare that museums would fight over them. The Daytona alone, there were only 503 ever made, and most of them were modified or destroyed. Finding one in this condition is like discovering a perfectly preserved dinosaur. Patricia Westlake has long since abandoned any pretense of professional detachment. She moves between vehicles like a tourist in an unexpected wonderland, occasionally calling colleagues to describe what they're seeing. Her voice carries a growing excitement as she realizes the magnitude of what they've discovered. Mr. Reynolds, she says as they uncover their seventh vehicle, a 1967 L88 Corvette in factory-correct Marlboro maroon, I need to be frank with you. I've been handling estate law for 20 years, and I've never encountered anything like this. We're looking at a collection that could be worth millions of dollars. This changes the entire nature of your inheritance. The weight of her words settles over Jack like a heavy blanket. Millions of dollars, enough to pay off their debts, secure Lauren's college education, maybe even start fresh somewhere new. Financial security after months of grinding anxiety. But even as the financial possibilities dance through his mind, he finds himself thinking about something else. The pride in Lauren's voice as she discusses engine specifications and restoration techniques, the way she'd instinctively understood the care these vehicles represented. This wasn't just about money, it was about history, craftsmanship, and the passion someone had poured into preserving these mechanical treasures. We need to be careful, he says finally. Word about this can't get out until we understand exactly what we're dealing with. Legal ownership, insurance, security. There are too many variables to rush into anything. A collection like this would attract attention from all kinds of people, not all of them honest. Lauren nods seriously. And we need to learn about Uncle Victor. How did he acquire all this? Was he a dealer, a collector, or just incredibly lucky? The more we understand about his story, the better we can protect what he left us. Jack glances around the yard, suddenly aware of how exposed these treasures are. The broken fence, the neighborhood's decline, the urban scavengers who strip abandoned properties for anything of value, all represent immediate threats to what they've discovered. We should get a security service out here today, and we need to document everything thoroughly. Photographs, serial numbers, identifying marks. I can recommend several reputable firms, Patricia offers, already making notes, and I'll expedite the legal transfer of the property to ensure you have clear title before word gets out. Estate transfers like this can sometimes take weeks, but given the circumstances, I think we can accelerate the process. As they prepare to leave, Jack takes one last look at the Shelby Super Snake. In the afternoon light, with dust motes dancing around its perfect lines, the car seems to promise something beyond mere wealth. It promises purpose, a project that could bring him and Lauren together in ways he hadn't imagined possible. It offers a connection to American engineering heritage that had once inspired his career choice before spreadsheets and corporate politics drained the joy from his profession. Dad, Lauren's voice interrupts his thoughts. I know we have to be practical about this, but I hope we don't just sell everything right away. Some of these cars, they're not just valuable because of money. They're valuable because of what they represent. Uncle Victor spent his whole life preserving these pieces of history. Maybe we should think about continuing that work, at least for a while. Learn what he knew, understand why these specific cars mattered to him. Jack smiles, recognizing Diana's influence in their daughter's words. His wife had always seen beyond the surface of things, understanding that some treasures couldn't be measured in dollars alone. She'd valued craftsmanship and heritage, the stories embedded in objects made with care and purpose. Let's take it one step at a time, he says. First, we figure out exactly what we've inherited. Then we decide what Uncle Victor would have wanted us to do with it. No rush decisions. As they drive home in Patricia's sedan, the garage shrinking in the rearview mirror, Jack feels a cautious optimism beginning to bloom in his chest. For the first time in months, he and Lauren have shared genuine excitement about something. They've worked as a team, combining his analytical approach with her intuitive understanding of the car's significance. The Shelby GT500 Super Snake has been more than just their first discovery. It has been a catalyst, transforming a burden into an adventure, in a father-daughter relationship that had been strained by hardship into something that might, with patience and care, become stronger than ever. That evening, as Lauren researches classic car values on her laptop and Jack studies Uncle Victor's maintenance logs, their modest kitchen feels different. The overdue bills still sit in their neat piles, but they no longer seem like insurmountable obstacles. They've become temporary inconveniences, problems with solutions that might be sitting under tarps in a forgotten garage across town. Dad, Lauren says, looking up from her screen, her face illuminated by the blue glow of the computer. I think we're going to need to learn a lot about cars very quickly. There are whole forums dedicated to people trying to find cars exactly like the ones Uncle Victor had. Some collectors spend their entire lives searching for vehicles like that Daytona and never find one. How did he get all these cars? And why did nobody know about them? Jack nods, already thinking about the technical manuals he'll need to study, the experts he'll need to consult, the careful planning required to handle their inheritance responsibly. It feels good to have complex problems to solve again, even if they're nothing like the engineering challenges he'd faced before. These are problems with purpose, not just corporate puzzles designed to increase quarterly profits at the expense of quality. I think you're right, he says, but you know what? I think we're up for it. The next day dawns clear and cold, a perfect October morning for their return to the garage. Jack has spent half the night researching classic car values, authentication methods, and insurance requirements. The numbers are staggering. If the collection includes what they've seen so far, they're looking at well over $20 million in automotive history. The responsibility is daunting, but also exhilarating. For the first time in months, he has a clear purpose, a challenge worthy of his skills. Lauren bounds down the stairs, more energetic than Jack has seen her in years. She's wearing her mother's old work jacket, a heavy canvas affair with too many pockets that Diana had used when working on their Chevy. The sleeves are rolled up, and the shoulders are too wide, but Lauren wears it like armor, a connection to her mother's practical strength. I found some of Mom's old tools in the basement, she announces, dropping a small toolbox on the kitchen counter. The metal case is worn but well-maintained, each tool inside arranged with careful precision. Figured we might need them. You know, she always said you should never trust someone else's tools if you can help it. Jack feels a lump form in his throat. Diana's tools had been packed away after her death, too painful to see but too precious to give away. Now Lauren has reclaimed them, creating a bridge between past and present that feels both right and terrifying. The socket wrenches and precision screwdrivers represent a legacy of competence that his daughter is now embracing. She'd like that, he manages to say. She always said good tools were worth their weight in gold. The drive to Sycamore Street feels different today. Yesterday, they were reluctant inheritors of a problem. Today, they're explorers returning to a discovered treasure. Jack notices Lauren sketching in her notebook. Quick, precise drawings of the cars they'd uncovered, with notes about details that caught her eye. Her artistic skills surprises him, another talent developed during the months when communication between them had dwindled to practical necessities. "You've got your mother's hand," he says, glancing at the page. "The drawings are good, not just enthusiastic, but technically accurate, capturing the essence of each vehicle in a few well-placed lines. The proportions are perfect, with attention to the critical details that distinguish one model from another." Lauren shrugs but looks pleased. "I've been taking mechanical drawing at school. Mr. Brennan says I have a natural sense of proportion, says I should consider engineering or industrial design." She hesitates, then adds, "Mom used to draw like this. I found her old sketchbooks when I was looking for the tools. She designed whole engine modifications, drew them out by hand before building them." Another connection Jack hadn't known about, another facet of his wife's talents he'd failed to fully appreciate. How much of Diana lived on in their daughter? How much potential had he been too preoccupied to notice? The garage stands just as they left it, though Jack sees it differently now. Not as a collapsing burden, but as a fortress protecting hidden treasures. The security team Patricia recommended has already arrived, setting up temporary measures until a more permanent system can be installed. Heavy-duty locks secure the main building, and cameras monitor the perimeter. They've arranged to meet Patricia later, but this morning is for them to explore more methodically, to begin cataloging what they've found. As they approach the chain-link fence, a voice calls out from the neighboring property. "You must be Victor's family." The speaker is an elderly Hispanic man in oil-stained coveralls, his weathered hands resting on the fence that separates the properties. His face is deeply lined from decades of outdoor work, but his eyes are sharp and assessing. Despite his age, probably late 70s, he carries himself with the confident bearing of someone who's spent his life working with his hands. "I'm Mike Sandoval," the man says, extending a calloused hand. "Been Victor's neighbor for about 20 years. Wanted to pay my respects and see how you folks were making out with this place. Been wondering who'd take over since he passed." "I'm Jack, Victor's nephew. This is my daughter, Lauren. We're still trying to figure out exactly what my uncle left us." Jack shakes the offered hand, noting the strength in the older man's grip and the oil embedded in the skin's creases, the mark of a lifetime working with engines. Mike's eyes crinkle with what might be amusement. "Victor was a private man, but we talked cars sometimes over the fence. He mentioned you once or twice, said you were an engineer like him back in his younger days. Said you had a good mind for solving problems, but the corporate world had beaten some of the creativity out of you." The blunt assessment is delivered without malice, simply a reporting of facts. "Victor was an engineer?" Jack asked, surprised by this new information about his uncle. The family narrative had always painted Victor as the odd one, the brother who couldn't hold down a real job and instead puttered around with the old cars and machinery. No one had ever mentioned formal training. Worked for Ford in the 60s, according to him, specialized in performance modifications and racing applications before he went independent. That's how he got connected to the collector circuit, though I suspect there was more to it than just collecting. Victor wasn't the type to keep things just to look at them. He liked to understand how they worked, why they were built the way they were. Mike moves toward one of the covered vehicles with the familiarity of someone who's seen them before. "Mind if I take a look? Been curious about some of these beauties for years. Victor would let me peek occasionally, but he was particular about who got to see his full collection." Lauren quickly joins them as Mike pulls back a tarp to reveal a midnight blue 1969 Boss 429 Mustang, its massive hood bulge accommodating what enthusiasts called the semi-Hemi engine. His inspection is thorough and knowledgeable, checking details that speak of deep automotive expertise, casting numbers on the engine block, the authenticity of trim pieces, the correct texture of upholstery materials. "Factory correct in every detail," he murmurs approvingly. Victor knew his stuff. This isn't just a restored car. It's been maintained in museum-quality condition. Look at these hoses and belts. Period correct but not deteriorated. He must have been replacing them with new old stock components. That takes connections and knowledge most collectors don't have. Mike, Jack says carefully, did you know about Victor's involvement in racing? We found some photographs that suggest he was part of a competitive scene. The older man's expression grows thoughtful. Victor was connected to people who appreciated cars the way they were meant to be appreciated, not just sitting in garages looking pretty, but actually being driven hard and fast. He had stories about test tracks in the desert, prototype engines that never made it to production, races that weren't exactly sanctioned by the manufacturers, but were used to test ideas they couldn't try officially. What kind of people? Lauren leans forward eagerly, drawn to the hint of a secret world beneath the conventional automotive history she'd read about. Engineers mostly, like Victor, guys who worked for the major manufacturers but couldn't always express their ideas through official channels. They'd modify cars on weekends, test new concepts, push the boundaries of what was possible with American muscle. Some of it was legal, some of it existed in gray areas. Back then, the distinction wasn't as clear as it is now. Companies would look the other way when their engineers ran unauthorized tests, especially if the results improved their products. Mike's explanation paints a picture of Uncle Victor that is far more complex than the reclusive man Jack remembers from family gatherings. This was someone who'd been part of an automotive underground, preserving and developing cars that pushed the limits of factory specifications, a technical innovator operating in the shadows of corporate America, keeping alive traditions and knowledge that might otherwise have been lost to efficiency experts and accountants. The thing about Victor, Mike continues, running his hand along the Mustang's fender with appreciation, was that he understood these cars weren't just machines. They were expressions of American engineering at its most creative. He saw himself as a curator, keeping alive the spirit of innovation that built the muscle car era. When everyone else was downsizing and compromising through the 70s and 80s, Victor was preserving the knowledge and craftsmanship that made these vehicles special. As they talk, Lauren has wandered into the main garage building and emerges with more discoveries. Technical manuals with Victor's handwritten modifications, correspondence with other collectors, and what appears to be detailed provenance documentation for each vehicle. Her arms are full of leather-bound ledgers and carefully organized files. "Dad, look at this," she says, showing him a leather-bound ledger. Uncle Victor documented everything, where he acquired each car, what modifications were made, maintenance history, even the stories behind why each vehicle was significant. It's like reading the biography of each car. He interviewed the original engineers, tracked down test drivers, collected factory documents that weren't supposed to exist. The ledger reveals the scope of Victor's network. He hadn't collected randomly, but had targeted specific vehicles with historical importance. Factory prototypes, race-proven cars, and one-off modifications that represented pivotal moments in automotive development. Each acquisition was backed by meticulous research and documentation, creating an unbroken chain of provenance that would make museum curators envious. This one entry is fascinating, Lauren continues, pointing to a page filled with precise handwriting. He acquired the Shelby from the estate of a Ford test driver who'd used it for high-speed evaluations in the Nevada desert. It wasn't just a show car, it was a working development vehicle with experimental components that never made it to production. The driver kept it instead of returning it for destruction when the program ended, and Victor tracked it down 20 years later. Mike nods approvingly. That sounds like Victor. He wasn't interested in trailer queens that never saw action. Every car in this collection was chosen because it had a story worth preserving, because it represented something important about American engineering. He used to say these weren't just cars, they were chapters in the story of how we built this country. As the morning progresses, Jack finds himself increasingly impressed by his uncle's methodical approach. The man had been a serious curator, not just a hobbyist with deep pockets. Each vehicle represented a piece of automotive history that might otherwise have been lost. Each component carefully preserved or restored with an engineer's attention to functional details. The collection wasn't random. It told a coherent story about American automotive innovation during a pivotal era. Mike, Jack says, would you be willing to help us understand what we've inherited? It's clear you know a lot about cars and we need expert guidance. There's so much here that we don't understand yet. The significance of particular models, the value of certain components. the historical context that makes these vehicles important. The older man's face brightens. Nothing would make me happier. Victor was a good neighbor, and he'd want these beauties to be properly cared for. Besides, he adds with a grin, I've been wondering about some of these cars for years. This is like getting access to a private museum. Victor would talk about them sometimes, but he was careful about who he let see the whole collection. Said some things weren't meant for casual observers. Lauren pulls out her phone and begins typing rapidly. I'm finding online forums where people discuss missing legendary vehicles. Dad, some of these cars that Uncle Victor preserved, people in the collector community think they were destroyed or lost decades ago. There are whole threads dedicated to trying to track down the Daytona with this exact VIN number. Nobody knew it still existed. As they stand in the garage surrounded by automotive history, Jack feels a growing sense of responsibility. This isn't just a financial windfall. It's a legacy that his uncle spent decades building, a collection that preserved important pieces of American manufacturing heritage. The cars represent more than just valuable assets. They're physical embodiments of engineering philosophy, testaments to a time when American innovation led the world. Each vehicle contains solutions to problems, approaches to design that might still have relevance in a world increasingly disconnected from its industrial foundations. The photographs had revealed Uncle Victor as more than a collector. He'd been a participant in automotive culture, someone who understood that cars were meant to be experienced, not just admired. Now Jack and Lauren face the challenge of honoring that legacy while dealing with the practical realities of ownership, security, preservation, insurance, and eventually, decisions about whether to maintain the collection or find new caretakers for these mechanical treasures. We need to learn everything we can about Uncle Victor's world, Jack decides, newfound purpose strengthening his voice. The history, the community, the significance of what he preserved. If we're going to be worthy custodians of this collection, we need to understand what it really represents. The prototype engine block sits like a metallic sculpture in the corner of Victor's workshop, its unusual configuration immediately catching Jack's trained eye. Unlike the familiar V8 layouts he recognizes, this power plant features an experimental design with offset cylinders and what appears to be variable compression ratios built into the block casting itself. This is incredible. Dad, look at these cooling passages. They're nothing like conventional designs. Jack kneels beside the engine, his engineering background, allowing him to appreciate the sophisticated metallurgy and innovative thinking that had gone into its creation. Serial numbers and casting marks indicate Ford origins, but the configuration is unlike anything he's seen in production vehicles. Mike Sandoval examines the engine with the reverence of someone encountering a long-lost treasure. I remember Victor mentioning this beauty. He said it came from a Ford Skunk Works project in the early 70s, something they were developing for racing before the oil crisis killed most performance programs. Lauren has already photographed every angle of the engine and is cross-referencing the serial numbers with online databases. Dad, I'm not finding any matches for these part numbers. This might be a completely unique prototype. The implications send a thrill through Jack's analytical mind. Prototype engines from major manufacturers are extraordinarily rare, especially ones that represented abandoned technological paths. This isn't just a collector's item, it's industrial archaeology, a glimpse into automotive development that never reached production. Mike, do you know the story behind how Victor acquired this? The older man's expression grows thoughtful. Victor was careful about details like that, but I got the impression he'd helped some Ford engineers preserve things that would otherwise have been scrapped when projects got canceled. Corporate accountants saw expensive failures, but Victor saw innovation worth preserving. As they explore deeper into the workshop, more mysteries emerge. Lauren discovers technical drawings tucked behind the engine, blueprints that show the power plant installed in various chassis configurations. Victor hadn't just preserved the engine, he'd been studying it, understanding its potential applications. Look at this. Uncle Victor was designing installations for different vehicles. This diagram shows the engine mounted in what looks like a Trans Am, and this one appears to be a Mustang application. Jack studies the precise draftsmanship, recognizing the work of someone who understood both theoretical engineering and practical implementation. Your uncle wasn't just a collector, Lauren. He was an active researcher, trying to understand the full potential of what he'd preserved. 3 days into their exploration of Victor's garage, the rhythm of their work has become comfortable and purposeful. Jack focuses on documenting the mechanical aspects of each vehicle, while Lauren photographs and researches their historical significance. Mike Sandoval stops by each day, offering insights and stories that help piece together the puzzle of Victor's life. It's Lauren who discovers the first truly puzzling artifact. She's organizing a file cabinet in Victor's office when she finds a manila envelope tucked behind a false panel. Inside is a collection of photographs unlike any they have seen before. Victor standing beside men in military uniforms, shaking hands with serious-looking officials in front of nondescript government buildings. Most intriguing is a group photo of engineers standing before what appears to be an experimental vehicle, with Prometheus Team 1971 handwritten on the back. "Dad, I think Uncle Victor was involved in something more than just collecting cars." Jack studies the photographs with growing bewilderment. Nothing in his limited knowledge of his uncle suggested government connections or classified projects. The men in the photos have the unmistakable bearing of military personnel, and several of the vehicles visible in the background bear no resemblance to production models he recognizes. What's Prometheus? That's because it was classified. Victor never talked about it directly, but he hinted a few times. Said he'd worked on projects that never saw the light of day because the world wasn't ready for them. Jack spreads the photographs across Victor's desk, arranging them chronologically based on dates stamped on their backs. They tell a story of a younger Victor, probably in his 30s, working with a team of engineers on vehicles that looked like normal muscle cars from the outside, but clearly contained experimental technology beneath their familiar shells. These aren't just race cars or hot rods. Look at these cooling systems, the non-standard fuel lines, the modified intake manifolds. They were building something very different and disguising it as conventional technology. Lauren has found more documents in the hidden compartment, partial technical specifications, security clearance forms with Victor's signature, and a Department of Defense contractor badge dated 1969 to 1973. Uncle Victor was working for the government during the height of the muscle car era, right when the oil crisis hit. The coincidence of timing sends Jack's mind racing. The early 70s marked the beginning of the end for American muscle cars as the oil embargo and new emissions regulations effectively killed the high-performance era. But what if some engineers had been working on solutions that never made it to production? "Mike, how much do you know about this Prometheus project?" The older man shakes his head. "Not much. Victor was tight-lipped about his government work. Said some things were better left in the past. But I do know he was bitter about how it ended. Said the bean counters pulled the plug just when they were making real breakthroughs." Lauren is examining a technical document with growing excitement. "Dad, look at these fuel consumption figures. If these are accurate, they were developing engine technology that was decades ahead of its time, high performance with efficiency that wouldn't be matched until the 2000s. Jack feels a chill run down his spine as the implications become clear. The oil crisis of '73 changed everything in the automotive world. Detroit scrambled to downsize, emissions choked performance, and the muscle car died almost overnight. But what if there had been another path? What if engineers like Victor had solutions that got buried? That would explain why he was so dedicated to preserving these cars and engines. They weren't just collector's items. They were evidence of what might have been, the future that never happened. The more they search, the more documents they find hidden throughout the garage. Technical manuals with sections carefully removed, correspondence with coded references to projects and components, photographs of test facilities in remote desert locations. A picture emerges of Victor as more than just an automotive enthusiast. He had been part of a government-sponsored research team developing advanced engine technology during a pivotal moment in American history. The question is, why keep all this? These documents must have been classified. Taking them would have been a serious breach of security protocols. Maybe that's why he was so secretive. Maybe he wasn't supposed to have any of this. Mike's weathered face shows conflicting emotions. Victor was a patriot, first and foremost. Navy man before he was an engineer. Whatever he did, he had his reasons. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows through the garage windows, Jack realizes they've stumbled onto something far more significant than a valuable car collection. They've discovered evidence of a classified government project that has remained hidden for over 50 years, a technological path not taken that might have changed the course of American automotive history. We should be careful about this. Until we understand exactly what Prometheus was and why Victor preserved these records, we need to keep this quiet. Lauren nods, her expression serious. Dad, do you think any of the cars here were actually part of the Prometheus project? Could some of these be the experimental vehicles from the photographs? The question haunts Jack as they drive home in silence, the implications too enormous to process immediately. If Victor had somehow acquired actual government prototype vehicles, the collection wasn't just valuable. It was potentially a national security matter, a preserved piece of classified history that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. That night, unable to sleep, Jack sits at the kitchen table with Diana's old photo albums. He's looking for any mention of Victor, any clue that might explain why his reclusive uncle had chosen him as the inheritor of such a complicated legacy. In a family Christmas photo from 1995, he spots Victor in the background, watching Diana as she demonstrates a new power tool she'd received as a gift. The intensity of his gaze suggests more than casual interest. There's pride there and something else Jack can't quite identify. Lauren finds him there in the morning, surrounded by family photographs and lost in thought. Dad, did you sleep at all? I've been thinking about why Victor chose me. Look at how he's watching your mother. They had some kind of connection I never understood. Lauren studies the image. Mom always said she got her mechanical ability from her father's side of the family. Could there be a connection through Grandpa? The question plants a seed that will grow into something neither of them could anticipate. For now, though, they have more immediate concerns. Securing the collection, understanding its true significance, and deciding how to honor Victor's legacy without betraying whatever secret mission had driven him to preserve these automotive treasures. The morning brings a visitor to the garage, an immaculately dressed man in his 50s, whose luxury SUV seems out of place in the industrial neighborhood. Jack watches through the window as the stranger photographs the exterior of the building, making notes on a tablet. Can I help you? The man turns, offering a practiced smile and an expensive business card. Daniel Morrison, Apex Energy Partners. I understand you've recently inherited this property. I'd like to discuss a potential acquisition. How did you hear about that? Small world, Mr. Reynolds. Word travels in the collector community. I represent several clients interested in properties like this, especially when they contain items of interest. Lauren has joined them, standing protectively near her father. We're not looking to sell at this time. Morrison's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Perhaps after you've had a chance to assess what you're dealing with, you'll reconsider. My clients are prepared to make a very generous offer. No questions asked, cash transaction, immediate closure. Sometimes inheritances like this come with complications that are best resolved quickly. The implied threat isn't subtle. Jack feels his jaw tighten. I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Morrison. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have work to do. Of course, when you're ready to discuss terms, call me directly, day or night. Some treasures are too difficult for individuals to protect properly. Remember that. As Morrison drives away, Mike approaches from his adjacent property, his expression troubled. I've seen that type before. Vultures who circle when they smell something valuable. Victor dealt with them occasionally. People who wanted pieces of his collection but didn't appreciate what made them special. How would he even know about the cars? That's the question, isn't it? Let's get back to work. I want to document everything before we have more uninvited visitors. Inside the garage, they continue their methodical exploration, moving deeper into the warren of rooms that make up the building's interior. In what appears to be Victor's private office, Lauren discovers a hidden panel behind a bookshelf filled with automotive manuals. Dad, there's a whole room back here. The concealed space is small but meticulously organized. A workspace containing a drafting table, file cabinets, and walls covered with technical diagrams and maps. Unlike the rest of the garage, this room shows no signs of dust or neglect. Someone had been using it regularly until very recently. This was Uncle Victor's real office. Jack examines the diagrams with growing excitement. These aren't just theoretical. Look at the test data notations. Fuel consumption, emissions, performance metrics. Victor was actively developing these modifications. The most striking feature of the hidden room is a large map of the United States mounted on one wall, with dozens of red pins marking locations across the country. Each pin has a date and alphanumeric code written beside it. A legend in the corner identifies them as Prometheus assets, recovered and pending. I think that Victor was tracking down the original Prometheus project vehicles. The cars in our garage might be just part of a larger collection he was trying to reassemble. Lauren is already checking the pins against their inventory list. Several of these match the locations where Uncle Victor acquired the cars we've found so far. But there are dozens more pins here, places all over the country. As they explore further, they discover a leather-bound journal hidden in a locked drawer of the drafting table. Inside, Victor's precise handwriting details his decades-long quest to locate and preserve the vehicles and components from the abandoned Prometheus project. The entries are part automotive detective story, part technical analysis, as he tracks down cars that had been dispersed when the program was suddenly terminated in late 1973. Listen to this entry from 1980. Located P-17 in a barn outside Tulsa. Owner had no idea what he had. Thought it was just a modified Charger with a seized engine. Purchased for $3,500 and transported to secure storage. Engine block is intact with original fuel delivery system untouched. This makes 4 complete prototype power plants recovered. 8 still missing. Jack feels the weight of Victor's mission settling onto his shoulders. He was systematically finding and preserving these cars before they were destroyed or modified beyond recognition. This wasn't just collecting, it was rescue work. Mike Sandoval, who has been quietly helping with their inventory, examines the map with knowing eyes. Victor traveled a lot, would disappear for weeks sometimes, come back with a flatbed hauling something under tarps. Never talked much about where he'd been, but he always seemed satisfied, like a man who'd accomplished something important. As they continue reading the journal, a disturbing pattern emerges. Victor's entries become increasingly paranoid in recent years, with references to observers and interested parties who seem to be monitoring his activities. The final entry, dated just 3 weeks before his death, contains a cryptic warning. Morrison making inquiries again. Third approach this year. Someone has connected the dots. Time to secure the legacy. Jay will understand when the time comes. Jay, he meant you, Jack. He knew someone was after the collection and was preparing to pass it to you. Jack feels a chill that has nothing to do with the autumn air. But why me? I barely knew him. We weren't close. Before Lauren can respond, a metallic clang from the main garage area alerts them to another visitor. They emerge from the hidden office to find a slender woman in her 70s examining the prototype engine with expert hands. Her silver hair is cut in a no-nonsense style, and she moves with the precise efficiency of someone who has spent a lifetime in technical fields. Dual flow cooling system. Victor always said it was the key to the whole design. Excuse me, this is private property. The woman straightens, regarding them with sharp eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. Eleanor Whitfield. I worked with Victor at Ford, before Prometheus. When I heard about his passing, I wanted to see if certain items had been preserved. I'm glad to see this survived. It was Victor's finest work. You were part of the Prometheus project? We've just discovered documents about it. What exactly was it? Eleanor's expression grows cautious. Who else knows about what you found here? Just us. I'm Victor's nephew, Jack Reynolds. This is my daughter, Lauren. Something in Eleanor's posture relaxes slightly. Victor mentioned you, said you had his mechanical instincts, but a more practical mind. She glances around the garage, taking in the partially uncovered vehicles. I see he kept them all, stubborn to the end. Kept what? What exactly are these cars? Eleanor moves to the wall where a light switch panel seems unremarkable. She presses a specific sequence, and a section of the concrete floor begins to move, revealing a hidden hydraulic lift leading to a basement level none of them had discovered. If you want to understand Prometheus, you need to see what Victor really saved. This isn't just about cars, Mr. Reynolds. It's about the road not taken, and why certain people would prefer it stay buried. As the hidden platform descends into darkness, Jack feels the last pieces of his ordinary life falling away. Whatever secrets Victor preserved beneath this unassuming garage, They're now his responsibility, a legacy of hidden knowledge that powerful people want to control. The Shelby GT500 that had seemed like such a miraculous discovery just days ago now feels like merely the surface of a much deeper mystery. One that might explain why a reclusive engineer had chosen his estranged nephew to inherit not just a collection of rare automobiles, but a decades-long mission with national implications. The platform descends smoothly into darkness, revealing a hidden level beneath the garage that none of them had suspected. Fluorescent lights flicker on automatically, illuminating a space that looks more like a research facility than a storage area. Clean concrete floors, workbenches equipped with specialized tools, and most surprisingly, a complete computer system that appears recently used. Victor's real workshop, where he continued the work that others abandoned. The centerpiece of the underground space is a vehicle unlike anything Jack has ever seen, a 1972 Mustang body that has been extensively modified to house a power plant that bears only passing resemblance to conventional engines of the era. The hood is removed, revealing a complex array of systems that integrate with the experimental engine block they discovered upstairs. This is P1, the first fully functional Prometheus prototype. On the outside, a stock Mustang that wouldn't draw a second glance. Under the skin, technology that could have changed everything. Lauren circles the car, her eyes wide with wonder. What does it do? What makes it special? Multi-fuel capability. That was the breakthrough. An engine that could run efficiently on gasoline, alcohol, or even synthesized fuels derived from coal or biomass. Variable compression ratios that adjusted automatically to different fuel types, maintaining performance while drastically reducing emissions. Jack's engineering mind races as he examines the systems. This is decades ahead of its time. We're just now developing flexible fuel vehicles that approach this level of adaptation. 52 years ahead, to be precise. We had working prototypes before the oil embargo hit in '73. Cars that could have freed America from foreign oil dependency before it began. Vehicles that maintained performance while slashing pollution. What happened? Eleanor's expression hardens. Politics, economics, vested interests. Take your pick. When the oil crisis hit, you'd think our work would have been accelerated. Instead, the program was terminated almost overnight. The official explanation was budget cuts, but those of us inside knew better. Certain industries stood to lose billions if Americans suddenly had cars that could run on domestically produced alternative fuels. So the government just gave up on the technology? Worse, they buried it, ordered all prototypes dismantled, all research confiscated. Official records were sealed under national security directives. Eleanor looks around the workshop with grim satisfaction. But they didn't count on Victor. Mike Sandoval has remained silent until now, taking in the hidden facility with wide eyes. I always knew he was up to something more than just collecting. But this, Victor never said a word about any of this. He couldn't. When the project was terminated, several engineers protested. They faced legal action, career destruction. Some even reported threats against their families. Victor took a different approach. He appeared to accept the shutdown, took a generous severance package, and then spent the next 50 years secretly preserving what we had created. Lauren has found another hidden treasure, a wall of photographs documenting the original Prometheus team, young engineers standing proudly beside their creations. In each image, Victor appears with the same determined expression, often working directly on the experimental engines. He was the lead designer, the youngest member of the team, but the most brilliant. The multi-fuel system was primarily his creation. Jack struggles to reconcile this image of his uncle, a visionary engineer at the center of classified government research, with the distant figure he barely knew from family gatherings. Why didn't he ever tell anyone in the family about his work? Security clearances initially. Later, protection. The less anyone knew, the safer they were. Eleanor gives Jack a measuring look. Did Victor ever explain why he named you as his heir? No, we weren't close. I barely saw him over the years. Eleanor nods as if confirming something to herself. He watched your career more closely than you knew. Said you had the right combination of skills and integrity. He needed someone who could understand the technical aspects, but also had the moral compass to make the right decisions about what happens next. What does happen next? What are we supposed to do with all this? Before Eleanor can answer, a soft electronic tone sounds from a security panel near the lift. Someone's entered the main garage, she says, quickly moving to a monitor that shows surveillance camera feeds. The screen reveals Daniel Morrison moving purposefully through the upper level, accompanied by two men who look more like security personnel than automotive enthusiasts. Morrison. I should have known he'd show up quickly. You know him? His father was William Morrison, a senior executive at National Energy in the 70s, one of the most vocal opponents of the Prometheus project behind the scenes. Eleanor's voice drops to a near whisper. Victor always suspected Morrison Sr. was involved in the program's termination. Too many coincidences, too many leaked documents finding their way to oil company executives. On the screen, they watch as Morrison discovers the hidden room behind the bookshelf, his expression changing from determined to triumphant as he examines the map with its marked locations. We need to go up there. Eleanor catches his arm. Wait, there's something you need to understand first. Daniel Morrison has spent years trying to locate and destroy any remaining evidence of the Prometheus project. His family fortune was built on the energy monopolies that our technology threatened. If he finds this facility, this is my property. I'm not going to hide down here while someone breaks in and helps himself to my uncle's legacy. Eleanor studies him for a moment, then nods. Victor was right about you. Here. She moves to a cabinet and retrieves a small leather portfolio. Take this. No matter what happens upstairs, keep it safe. It contains everything needed to understand and reproduce the Prometheus technology, Victor's insurance policy against complete suppression. Jack accepts the portfolio, feeling the weight of responsibility it represents. Lauren, you stay down here with Mike and Eleanor. Dad, no way, I'm coming with you. This isn't a debate, Lauren. We don't know what these people want or how far they'll go to get it. The determined set of his daughter's jaw tells him she won't be dissuaded. Fine, but stay behind me and let me do the talking. As the lift begins its ascent, Jack feels a strange calm settling over him. For months, he's felt powerless, beaten down by unemployment and financial strain. Now, facing an unknown threat, he feels more focused and purposeful than he has since Diana's death. Whatever Victor's secrets are, whatever the Prometheus project represents, it's now his responsibility to protect it, not just for his uncle's memory, but for whatever greater purpose drove Victor to preserve this technology for half a century. The lift reaches the main level, and Jack steps forward to confront Morrison, Lauren close behind him. From distant observer to active guardian, his role has shifted irrevocably. The inheritance is no longer just about cars or money. It's about uncovering truth buried for decades and deciding what should finally be brought into the light. Mr. Morrison, I don't recall inviting you in. Morrison turns from the map he's been studying, his surprise quickly masked by professional composure. Mr. Reynolds, I was hoping to continue our conversation about the property. Your door was open. The lie is delivered smoothly, without hesitation. Strange, I'm certain we locked it. Jack positions himself between Morrison and the still open lift to the basement. I'll have to ask you to leave now. We can schedule a proper meeting if you're still interested in discussing the property. Morrison's eyes flick to the hidden room, then to the lift behind Jack. His companions, clearly more than just business associates, have spread out slightly, their stances suggesting professional security training. I think we should have that discussion now. I'm prepared to offer you $5 million for this property and its contents, as is, no questions asked. You can be free of this burden by the end of the week. That's very generous, considering you don't know what's here. I know exactly what's here, Mr. Reynolds. Morrison's voice hardens. Obsolete automotive parts, remnants of failed experiments, the collected obsessions of an old man who couldn't let go of the past, nothing of real value in today's world. If it's worthless, why offer $5 million? Morrison regards her with cold assessment. Sentimental value to certain collectors. The point is, this material would be better preserved by those with the resources to properly maintain it. Like National Energy, the company your father helped build by ensuring Americans remain dependent on oil imports? The change in Morrison is immediate, a tightening around the eyes, a subtle shift in posture. You've been talking to Eleanor Whitfield. I should have expected Victor would maintain contact with his old colleagues. Why are you really here, Mr. Morrison? What are you afraid might be hidden in these obsolete parts? Morrison sighs as if tired of maintaining pretenses. History belongs to those who write it, Mr. Reynolds. Your uncle was attempting to rewrite chapters best left closed. The energy transitions of the 1970s happened for good reasons. Economic realities, market forces, practical limitations of alternative technologies. And not because companies like yours actively suppressed innovations that threatened your business model. One of Morrison's men moves closer to the lift, eyeing the open platform with professional interest. Jack shifts his position, maintaining the blockade. Let me be direct. The materials in this garage are technically still government property. The Prometheus project was a classified defense initiative. Taking possession of its components constitutes a federal offense. I'm offering you a clean way out, generous compensation and no legal complications. If these are government materials, why isn't the government here to claim them? Why a private energy company executive? Morrison smiles thinly. Public-private partnership are complex, Miss Reynolds. National Energy has maintained certain contractual relationships with federal agencies since the 1970s. We're authorized to secure materials related to those contracts. I'd like to see that authorization. Until then, I'll need you to leave. This is private property and you're trespassing. For a moment, tension fills the garage as Morrison weighs his options. Finally, he nods to his men, who reluctantly step back. I'm trying to help you, Mr. Reynolds. There are aspects to this situation you don't understand. Dangerous aspects. He reaches into his jacket and produces another business card. When you're ready to be reasonable, call this number. The offer stands for 48 hours. After that, events may take a less pleasant turn. As Morrison and his men depart, Jack locks the garage door behind them, his mind racing. The confrontation has confirmed Eleanor's warnings. Powerful interests are still actively working to suppress the Prometheus technology, even after 5 decades. Dad, what happens now? Before Jack can answer, Eleanor emerges from the lift, her expression grim. Now you understand what Victor was protecting all these years. Not just cars, but proof of a deliberate suppression of technology that could have changed America's energy future. Why would the government allow that? If this technology was so revolutionary, why kill it? It's complicated. The official termination came from the Department of Defense, but the pressure originated elsewhere. The oil crisis of '73 created panic, and in that chaos, certain decisions were made that served private interests rather than national ones. Jack thinks of the portfolio Eleanor gave him, now tucked inside his jacket. Victor preserved the technology, but why not release it publicly? Why keep it hidden all these years? He tried early on, approached manufacturers, research universities, even Congress. Every path was blocked. Legal threats, funding suddenly pulled, doors mysteriously closed. Eleanor's voice carries decades of frustration. Eventually, he realized the only way to preserve the work was to hide it until the right moment and the right person came along. And that's me. I'm an unemployed engineer with a mortgage I can barely pay. How am I supposed to take on energy conglomerates and government agencies? Eleanor smiles for the first time. You're not alone, Jack. Victor built a network over the years. Former colleagues, sympathetic journalists, even a few officials who've come to question the decisions of the past. The Prometheus veterans are old now, but we've found allies among a younger generation concerned about energy independence and climate impact. Mike Sandoval, who has remained characteristically quiet throughout the confrontation, finally speaks up. Victor talked about a trigger point sometimes, said he was waiting for the right conditions, when the truth could finally emerge without being immediately buried again. What conditions? Public awareness, political will, technological readiness. Eleanor moves to the prototype vehicle. This was revolutionary in 1973, but manufacturing techniques weren't ready for mass production. Now, with modern materials and computer controls, these designs could be implemented immediately. Jack feels the weight of Victor's legacy settling more firmly on his shoulders. His uncle hadn't just preserved historical artifacts. He'd maintained a technological lifeline. waiting for the moment when America was ready to reconsider the path not taken. Morrison will be back with more resources and possibly legal maneuvers. We need to secure everything and document it thoroughly before that happens. Lauren is already moving with purpose, organizing tools and preparing to photograph the underground facility. We should digitize all the technical documentation, create backups, get everything into the cloud where it can't be seized or destroyed. Smart. Victor would be pleased to see your instincts. He always said the next generation would understand what was at stake better than his own. As they work into the evening, cataloging the hidden workshop and its treasures, Jack's mind keeps returning to the strange coincidence of timing, losing his engineering career just as he inherits his uncle's suppressed engineering legacy. Perhaps it's not coincidence at all. Perhaps Victor had been watching, waiting for the moment when Jack would be ready to embrace a new purpose. The hidden basement workshop becomes their command center over the next few days. Jack and Lauren work tirelessly to document every aspect of the Prometheus technology, with Eleanor providing crucial context about the original project and its innovations. Mike Sandoval maintains watch over the garage, alert for Morrison's return or other unwanted visitors. Lauren proves especially adept at organizing the historical materials, creating a digital archive of Victor's notes, photographs, and technical specifications. Her facility with both the technical content and the archival process impresses Eleanor, who begins treating her more as a colleague than a teenager. You have your grandfather's mind. My grandfather? You knew him? Eleanor seems to catch herself, glancing quickly at Jack. I meant Victor's approach to engineering problems. Very methodical, very precise. The slip feels significant, but Jack files it away to explore later. For now, they have more urgent concerns. Morrison has made good on his veiled threats, filing a legal motion claiming ownership of the vehicles and technical materials based on decades-old government contracts with National Energy. Patricia Westlake has engaged specialized attorneys to fight the claim, but the legal battle threatens to drain their limited resources. We need to accelerate our documentation. If there's any chance the courts might grant Morrison access, we need to ensure the technology is preserved beyond his reach. Eleanor nods grimly. Victor always feared it would come to this. That's why he created the portfolio I gave you. The essential elements distilled into a form that could be easily hidden and transported. Jack has been studying the portfolio's contents, marveling at his uncle's foresight. The documents contain not just technical specifications, but a narrative history of the Prometheus project, complete with names, dates, and documented instances of interference by energy industry executives. This is dynamite. If released publicly, it would create a scandal reaching back decades. That was Victor's insurance policy. He believed that if the suppression became public knowledge, it would be impossible to continue hiding the technology itself. So why didn't he release it? Timing and proof. He needed incontrovertible evidence that the technology worked as claimed. The documents tell the story, but the functioning prototype proves it's not just theory. Jack considers the P1 vehicle sitting in their underground workshop. So we need to demonstrate that this technology actually delivers on its promises. Multi-fuel capability, improved efficiency, reduced emissions. Exactly. Words can be dismissed as the bitter complaints of sidelined engineers. A working vehicle that embodies 5 decades of suppressed innovation? That speaks for itself. Lauren has been unusually quiet, studying something on her laptop. Dad, I think I found something important. I've been going through the digital files from Uncle Victor's computer, and there's a video file dated just 3 weeks before he died. She turns the screen to show them. Victor appears, much older than in the Prometheus photographs, but with the same intense gaze. He sits in what they now recognize as the basement workshop, the P1 prototype visible behind him. Jack, if you're watching this, then I've run out of time before I could brief you personally. I've arranged for everything to come to you because you're the only one I trust with this legacy. You have your father's integrity and your mother's determination, qualities that will be essential for what lies ahead. Jack feels a jolt at the familiar way Victor references his parents, as if he had known them intimately. The Prometheus project represents more than just advanced automotive technology. It stands as evidence of how innovation can be suppressed when it threatens established interests. For 50 years, I preserved both the technology and the documentation of its deliberate burial. Now that task falls to you. Victor's expression grows more serious. Morrison will come. He's been searching for the last Prometheus prototypes for years, following the same trail I used to find and preserve them. His father helped kill the project in '73, and he's dedicated to ensuring it stays buried. Don't underestimate how far he'll go. The recording continues with specific instructions about the documentation, the legal preparations Victor had made, and the network of former Prometheus engineers who might still be contacted for support. As it nears its conclusion, Victor's tone changes, becoming more personal. There's one more thing, Jack, something I've never told anyone in the family. It concerns Diana, and why I've chosen you as my heir. When the time is right, look in the Pontiac GTO's glove compartment. You'll find a letter that explains everything. The video ends abruptly, leaving them staring at the screen in silence. Jack feels a strange disorientation, as if the foundations of his understanding have shifted yet again. What connection could Victor have had to Diana that would influence his decision to leave the Prometheus legacy to Jack? The GTO, we need to check it. The 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge sits under its protective cover in the main garage, its carousel red paint gleaming as they remove the tarp. Jack approaches the passenger side with an odd sense of ceremony, aware that he's about to discover yet another layer of Victor's secrets. The glove compartment opens smoothly, revealing a sealed envelope addressed simply to Jack. The letter inside, written in Victor's precise hand, begins without preamble. Jack, there's no easy way to tell you this, so I'll be direct. Diana was my daughter. Your wife was my child. The world seems to stop as Jack reads those words. Lauren, reading over his shoulder, gasps audibly. Mom was his daughter? That would make him my grandfather. Jack continues reading, his hands trembling slightly. Her mother, Catherine, died in childbirth. I was serving in the Navy then, unprepared to raise a child alone. Catherine's sister, Marie, and her husband agreed to adopt Diana as their own. They were good people who gave her a stable home and never told her the truth, at my request. I watched her grow from a distance, saw her inherit my aptitude for mechanical things, my stubbornness, my way of seeing problems. When she met you at college, I knew immediately you were right for each other. Two engineers who approach problems from opposite directions, her intuitive leaps balanced by your methodical analysis. I maintained my distance out of respect for Marie and Henry, who were her parents in all the ways that mattered. Later, my work with Prometheus made it dangerous to have close family connections. There were threats, surveillance, pressure applied to anyone associated with the project. When Diana fell ill, I wanted to come forward to tell her the truth, but the doctors were clear that nothing could be done, and I feared adding confusion and distress to her final days. It's my greatest regret that she never knew. I've chosen you as my heir, not just because of your engineering background, but because you are family in the truest sense. Lauren carries my bloodline, my aptitude, and Diana's spirit. The Prometheus legacy belongs in your hands because you and Lauren are my legacy too. Jack lowers the letter, meeting Lauren's wide-eyed gaze. He was your grandfather. All this time. That's why he left everything to you, not just as an engineer who could understand the technology, but as family. But why keep it secret all these years? Why not tell Mom the truth? Security initially. The Prometheus engineers faced real threats. Victor was protecting Diana by maintaining distance. And later habit, some secrets get harder to tell the longer you keep them. Jack thinks about the Christmas photograph. Victor watching Diana with that unidentifiable expression, now clearly recognizable as a father's pride and regret. How many family gatherings had Victor attended, watching his daughter from afar, never acknowledging their true relationship? The revelation transforms their understanding of their inheritance. The Prometheus legacy isn't just a random bequest from a distant relative. It's a family heritage passed from grandfather to granddaughter, with Jack as the chosen steward. This changes everything, and nothing. We still need to protect what Victor preserved, but now we understand why it came to us. Lauren touches the GTO's gleaming fender. This was more than just another car in his collection. This was his connection to Mom. Jack nods, remembering Diana's inexplicable fascination with Pontiac GTOs. She'd always said someday she'd own one, restore it herself. Had some subconscious memory of Victor influenced that desire? Some genetic predisposition toward the same automotive passions? Morrison will be back. With this personal connection established, do you still want to pursue Victor's plan? It won't be easy and the opposition will be formidable. Jack looks at Lauren, seeing the determination in her eyes that mirrors his own. We're going to finish what Victor started. Not just because he was family, but because he was right. This technology deserves its chance, 50 years delayed. The personal revelation adds urgency to their work. They're no longer just preserving an anonymous engineer's legacy, they're continuing a family mission that spans 3 generations. As the sun sets on this day of discoveries, Jack feels a strange peace settling over him. The path ahead is uncertain and likely dangerous, but for the first time since Diana's death, he has a clear purpose. One that honors both his wife's unknown father and the daughter who carries their shared legacy forward. Their decision to restore P1 to full working condition takes on new meaning with the discovery of their family connection. Jack, Lauren, and Eleanor work in shifts, methodically rebuilding the complex multi-fuel injection system according to Victor's detailed notes. The technology is a hybrid of 1970s mechanical engineering and surprisingly advanced electronic controls that were decades ahead of their time. Victor always said the real breakthrough wasn't the mechanical components, but the adaptive control system. Eleanor explains as they calibrate fuel sensors. Anyone could design an engine that ran on alternative fuels. The magic was creating one that could switch between them seamlessly, optimizing performance regardless of what was in the tank. Lauren proves to have an intuitive understanding of the system that surprises even Eleanor. You really do have the Medina touch, the older woman comments as Lauren diagnoses a fuel pressure issue that had stumped them for hours. Victor could visualize the entire system at once, see how changes in one component would affect everything downstream. It's rare, even among experienced engineers. The deeper they delve into the Prometheus technology, the more Jack appreciates its elegance. Unlike many experimental systems that require exotic materials or impossible manufacturing tolerances, Victor's design had been deliberately practical, revolutionary but implementable with 1970s manufacturing capabilities. It could have been mass-produced then. It could certainly be produced now. He always insisted on solutions that could scale, Eleanor confirms. Said there was no point creating a wonder car if only millionaires could afford it. The Prometheus vehicles were meant to be democratic, American innovation that would benefit everyone, not just the privileged few. As they work, Jack notices Morrison's surveillance increasing. Unmarked vehicles park across from the garage at irregular intervals. Men in business attire take photographs from a distance. Once, Lauren spots a drone hovering briefly over the property before disappearing. They're getting desperate, Eleanor observes. Victor always said Morrison's type hates not being in control more than anything. The idea that this technology exists outside their reach must be driving them crazy. Jack worries about the legal front. Morrison's attorneys have filed multiple motions, each more aggressive than the last. Patricia Westlake reports that they're facing not just civil claims, but potential criminal charges related to possession of classified materials. Their legal bills are mounting, and Jack's savings are nearly depleted. We need to accelerate the timeline, he decides after a particularly worrying call from Patricia. At the rate they're escalating, we may only have weeks before they find a judge willing to grant them access to the property. Eleanor agrees. The P1 is nearly operational. We should focus on completing it and documenting a full demonstration. Once we have irrefutable proof that the technology works as claimed, we can take it public. Go public how? Lauren asks. If Morrison has the connections Victor thought he did, wouldn't they just shut us down through other channels? Victor had a plan for that too, Eleanor says, producing a thumb drive from her pocket. This contains contact information for journalists, academics, and government officials who've shown interest in alternative energy independence over the years. People who might listen without immediately dismissing us as conspiracy theorists. Their work takes on increased urgency. They rotate shifts to maintain 24-hour progress on the prototype, sleeping on cots in the underground workshop rather than returning home. Mike Sandoval brings food and keeps watch, his military background proving useful as he establishes basic security protocols and early warning systems around the perimeter. On the fifth day of their accelerated effort, the P-1's engine turns over for the first time in decades. The sound is different from a conventional V8, smoother, with a distinctive harmonic that suggests its unique internal geometry. Even running on regular gasoline, preliminary tests show fuel efficiency 40% better than comparable engines of the era, with dramatically reduced emissions. Now for the real test, Eleanor says, producing a container of clear liquid. Ethanol, pure grain alcohol. If the multi-fuel system works as designed, we should be able to switch fuel sources without shutting down. They gather around as Jack activates the fuel transition sequence. There's a momentary hesitation as the engine management system detects the change, then a subtle shift in tone as the variable compression system adapts to the new fuel. The engine continues running smoothly, its performance unchanged despite the completely different energy source. It works, Lauren breathes, her face illuminated by the diagnostic screen, showing real-time adjustments in timing, compression, and fuel delivery. It actually works. Eleanor's eyes shine with vindication. Of course it works. We knew it worked 50 years ago. The question was never if the technology was viable. It was whether the world was ready to accept it. Jack feels a profound sense of accomplishment, tinged with anger at the decades of suppression. How many billions of barrels of oil had been imported? How many wars fought over energy security? How many environmental disasters endured because this technology had been deliberately buried? The cost to America and to the world was incalculable. Their celebration is short-lived. That evening, Mike bursts into the workshop, his expression grim. "We've got trouble. Morrison's people just served papers at your house. They're claiming immediate seizure rights under national security provisions. A judge has granted a temporary order allowing them to secure the property pending a full hearing." "When?" "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. They'll have federal marshals with them." Jack looks at the P-1, so close to being fully documented. "We need more time, just 24 hours to complete the testing and get the results distributed." Eleanor's expression hardens with determination. "Then we'll have to make our own time. Victor always had contingency plans. There's a reason he built this place with multiple exits." She leads them to what appears to be a solid concrete wall at the far end of the underground workshop. A hidden panel reveals another keypad, and when Eleanor enters a code, a section of the wall slides silently aside, revealing a tunnel. Service access to the storm drainage system. It comes out 3 blocks away, well outside any perimeter they're likely to establish. Victor used it to move vehicles in and out without being observed. "We're going to move the P-1?" Lauren asks, excitement edging her voice. "Tonight?" Eleanor nods. "We have a secure facility about 40 miles from here, an old aircraft hangar on private property. One of our allies from the original Prometheus team owns it. We can complete the documentation there beyond Morrison's reach." "What about the rest of the collection? We can't move everything." "We don't need to. The P-1 is what matters. It's the working proof of concept. The documentation and Victor's portfolio contain all the technical specifications. The rest of the collection is historically valuable, but not essential to our immediate goal." The decision weighs heavily on Jack. Moving the prototype feels like crossing a line, from passive preservation to active resistance. But Morrison has forced their hand, using the very legal system that should protect innovation to instead suppress it. "Let's do it. We'll need to be careful. They're probably watching the building." Mike's military experience proves invaluable as they prepare. Using cameras Eleanor reveals were installed throughout the neighborhood. They monitor Morrison's surveillance team, 2 men in an unmarked sedan half a block away, and likely electronic monitoring as well. "We need a distraction," Mike says, "something to draw their attention while we move the car." Lauren suggests a simple but effective approach, a timed power failure that will affect the entire block, including any surveillance equipment. Eleanor shows them how to access the neighborhood distribution box through another tunnel branch, where they can trigger a localized outage that will appear to be a routine equipment failure. Under cover of darkness and the engineered blackout, they push the P-1 through the tunnel, its engine silent, guided only by flashlights. The passage is tight but navigable, designed specifically for this purpose decades earlier by a victor who clearly anticipated someday needing to evade unwanted attention. They emerge into a storm drain 3 blocks away, where a nondescript enclosed trailer waits, driven by a former Prometheus engineer Eleanor has summoned through their old network. The P1 is quickly loaded, secured, and covered. By the time power is restored to the neighborhood 20 minutes later, the prototype is already on its way to the secure facility, with Eleanor accompanying it. Jack, Lauren, and Mike return to the garage through normal entrances, maintaining the appearance that nothing has changed. They spend the remainder of the night removing any evidence of their recent work on the P1, ensuring that when Morrison arrives with his court order, he'll find plenty of valuable cars, but nothing that reveals the true nature of the Prometheus technology. As dawn breaks, Jack gathers their small team in Victor's office. When Morrison shows up, let me do the talking. We comply with the court order, we have to, but we reveal nothing about the P1 or where it's gone. As far as they know, it's just another old car that Victor collected. Nothing special. Lauren looks troubled. What if they ask directly? I don't want to lie to federal marshals. Then we say nothing. We're not required to help them understand what they're looking at. Just don't volunteer information. Mike nods approvingly. Military Intelligence 101, stick to name, rank, and serial number. Don't elaborate, don't explain, don't engage. At precisely 8 a.m., a convoy of vehicles pulls up outside the garage. Morrison emerges from the lead car, accompanied by 2 U.S. Marshals and what appear to be technical specialists carrying equipment cases. His expression is triumphant as he approaches, court order in hand. Mr. Reynolds, I believe you have been expecting us. I trust you'll cooperate fully with the retrieval of classified government property. Jack accepts the document, reviewing it carefully before responding. We'll comply with the court order, Mr. Morrison. You have temporary authority to catalog the contents of this facility pending a full hearing. But I want to be clear. These vehicles and materials were legally acquired by my uncle over many decades. We'll be contesting your claims vigorously. Morrison's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Contest all you want. The outcome is inevitable. National security concerns always trump private property rights. He gestures to his team. Now, if you'll step aside, we have a lot of ground to cover. As Morrison's people spread through the garage, Jack, Lauren, and Mike maintain a watchful presence, observing but not interfering. The technical specialists photograph and scan each vehicle, paying particular attention to engine compartments and any modifications. It's nearly noon when one of the specialists approaches Morrison with a concerned expression. After a brief, hushed conversation, Morrison strides directly to Jack, his composed facade cracking for the first time. Where is it? Where's the prototype? Jack maintains a neutral expression. I'm not sure what you're referring to. As you can see, all the vehicles are here, just as they were when my uncle passed. Don't play games with me, Reynolds. The P1 prototype, the multi-fuel test vehicle. It was here. We have satellite thermal imaging from last week showing its engine signature. Where have you moved it? Mr. Morrison, this court order gives you authority to catalog what's present, not to interrogate me about things that may or may not exist. If you believe something is missing, I suggest you amend your filing with the court. Morrison's face flushes with anger. You have no idea what you're dealing with. This isn't just about old cars or corporate interests. There are national security implications you can't begin to comprehend. Then perhaps you should have been more forthcoming from the beginning, instead of trying to intimidate us with vague threats and lowball offers. For a moment, Morrison seems on the verge of losing control, then with visible effort, he regains his composure. This isn't over, Reynolds, not by a long shot. We'll find what you've hidden, and when we do, the consequences will extend far beyond civil litigation. As Morrison storms back to his team, Lauren approaches Jack, keeping her voice low. Dad, what did he mean about national security implications? Eleanor never mentioned anything like that. I don't know, but I'm starting to think there's more to the Prometheus project than even Eleanor has told us. Jack watches as Morrison's team continues their methodical documentation, their movements now carrying an edge of urgency. Whatever it is, Morrison is genuinely worried, not just annoyed. And that makes me think we need to be very careful about what we do next. The inspection continues for hours. with Morrison's technical team documenting every aspect of Victor's collection. They pay special attention to any components that might be related to the missing prototype, photographing the experimental engine block they'd found on their first day and taking samples of various fluids and materials. By late afternoon, they've established a preliminary inventory and secured the premises with their own locks and security system. The court order gives them ongoing access for 30 days, pending the full hearing that will determine ultimate ownership. "We'll be back tomorrow to continue the assessment," Morrison informs Jack as they prepare to leave. "In the meantime, nothing is to be removed from this property. The marshals will maintain surveillance, and any attempt to access the building without authorization will result in immediate arrest." After Morrison's convoy departs, Jack, Lauren, and Mike make their way to the secure facility where Eleanor has taken the P-1. The old aircraft hangar sits on private land owned by Dr. Turo. Robert Chen, one of the original Prometheus engineers who now lives in semi-retirement on the property. In his 80s but still sharp, Dr. Chen greets them with the enthusiasm of someone who has waited decades for this moment. "We've already completed the basic performance verification," he informs them, leading the way to where the P-1 sits in the center of the hangar, surrounded by diagnostic equipment. It exceeds the original specifications in every category. The multi-fuel system works flawlessly, and we've documented the transitions between gasoline, ethanol, and a synthetic fuel we developed based on Victor's later research. Eleanor approaches, her expression troubled. "Jack, we need to talk." Morrison's court filing mentioned national security concerns. That wasn't part of the original suppression narrative. "I noticed that too. What aren't you telling us, Eleanor? What was Prometheus really about?" The older woman exchanges glances with Dr. Chen, who nods almost imperceptibly. "The multi-fuel capability was only part of the project," she admits. "The real breakthrough, the reason the government funded us in the first place, was what the Pentagon called strategic fuel flexibility." "What does that mean?" "It means warfare without supply lines," Dr. Chen explains. "Vehicles that could run on whatever fuel was locally available. Gasoline, alcohol, plant oils, even coal-derived synthetics. The military applications were obvious. Tanks and transport vehicles that wouldn't be dependent on vulnerable fuel convoys, that could operate deep behind enemy lines using captured or improvised fuels." Eleanor continues. "But the technology had a dual nature. The same system that would free our military from petroleum dependency would also free our civilian economy. That's what frightened the oil interests. Not just decreased consumption, but complete independence from their product. Cars that could run on fuel made from American coal, American crops, American resources. So why did the military abandon it? Wouldn't they want that capability?" Chen's expression darkens. "Politics. The oil crisis created panic, and certain elements within the defense establishment had close ties to the petroleum industry. They convinced key decision-makers that the technology was unreliable, too complex for field deployment. Internal sabotage, essentially. But that doesn't explain Morrison's current concerns. This is 50-year-old technology we're talking about. What national security risk could it possibly pose now?" Eleanor and Dr. Chen exchange another look, and Jack realizes they're still holding something back. "There's more to the P-1 than just the multi-fuel system, isn't there?" Chen sighs deeply. "The variable compression technology had additional applications. Applications that went well beyond civilian transportation or even military logistics." "What kind of applications?" "Hypersonic propulsion," Eleanor says quietly. "The same technology that allows the P-1's engine to adapt to different fuels can be modified to create a new class of jet engines, ones that could power missiles or aircraft at speeds and altitudes that would make them virtually impossible to intercept, Mach 10 or higher, with conventional materials." The implications hit Jack like a physical blow. That's why Morrison is so desperate. It's not just about energy independence. It's about military technology that could shift the balance of power. Exactly. If this technology were to reach certain foreign powers, it would neutralize billions in defense systems overnight. Missile defense, air superiority, carrier groups, all potentially obsolete. Lauren, who has been listening intently, breaks her silence. "But Uncle Victor knew this. He preserved the technology anyway. Why? Because he believed in checks and balances, Dr. Chen says. He thought no single country should have unrestricted military superiority, that the threat of mutual destruction was what kept the peace. More importantly, he believed the civilian benefits outweighed the military concerns. Energy independence, drastically reduced pollution, economic prosperity not tied to foreign oil. These were worth the risks, in his view. Jack feels the weight of responsibility increase exponentially. What had seemed like a straightforward case of corporate suppression has suddenly become a complex ethical dilemma with global implications. The technology they're preparing to reveal and could transform America's energy landscape for the better, but it could also trigger a new arms race. We need to think about this carefully, he says finally. Morrison isn't just a corporate stooge protecting profits. He genuinely believes he's preventing a national security disaster. We need to consider whether he might be right. He's not right, Eleanor says firmly. The suppression was wrong 50 years ago, and it's wrong now. Yes, there are military implications, but those can be managed. The civilian benefits can't be denied any longer, not with climate change accelerating and global conflicts still centering on oil. Lauren has moved to the P1, her hand resting on its fender thoughtfully. What would Uncle Victor want us to do? He preserved this technology for 50 years, waiting for the right moment. Would he consider this the right moment? I think that's why he left it to us, Jack says slowly, understanding dawning. He knew the decision wouldn't be simple, that there would be legitimate concerns on both sides. He wanted someone who would weigh the ethical implications carefully, not just make a knee-jerk decision based on ideology or profit. So what do we do? Lauren asks. Go public with everything? Selectively release the civilian applications? Or keep it all hidden for another 50 years? Jack considers the options, feeling the weight of a decision that could affect millions of lives for generations to come. I think we need a third path. Not full disclosure that could lead to military applications we can't control, and not continued suppression that denies the world the civilian benefits. We need a controlled release, the energy technology made public in a way that benefits humanity without triggering a new arms race. Eleanor nods slowly. Victor would approve of that approach. But how do we achieve it? Morrison and his allies won't simply stand aside. We use the portfolio Victor left us, the documentation of the original suppression. We make it clear that we understand the military implications and have no intention of revealing those aspects. But we also make it clear that any attempt to resuppress the civilian technology will result in everything becoming public. Mutually assured disclosure. Dr. Chen smiles for the first time. Game theory, Victor would definitely approve. A balanced approach that recognizes legitimate concerns on all sides while still moving forward. As they begin planning their next steps, Jack feels a strange sense of clarity. The path ahead is still dangerous and uncertain, but for the first time, he understands why Victor chose him for this task. Not because he was the perfect engineer or the perfect strategist, but because he would weigh the human consequences alongside the technical possibilities. The Prometheus legacy isn't just about revolutionary technology. It's about the wisdom to use that technology responsibly, balancing progress against risk, individual benefit against collective security. As Victor's son-in-law and Lauren's father, Jack stands at the intersection of these competing values: family, innovation, security, and truth, trying to find the path that honors them all. Lauren joins him, her expression resolute. Whatever we decide, we're in this together. 3 generations of the Medina family finishing what Grandpa Victor started. Jack nods, drawing strength from his daughter's determination. The road ahead will be difficult, with powerful forces aligned against them. But they have something Morrison and his allies lack: the moral clarity that comes from seeking balance rather than dominance, progress rather than control. As night falls on the hangar, they continue working on the P1, preparing it for the public demonstration that will change the course of America's energy future, while carefully considering how that revelation might change the world in ways even Victor couldn't have foreseen. The dawn breaks crisp and clear over Dr. Von Chen's property, casting long shadows across the tarmac where the P1 prototype sits gleaming in the early morning light. For 3 days, they've worked around the clock, refining their strategy while completing the documentation of the vehicle's revolutionary capabilities. The multi-fuel system now operates at peak efficiency, seamlessly transitioning between conventional gasoline, ethanol, and synthetic alternatives with no loss in performance. Final diagnostics show a 43% improvement in fuel efficiency over comparable engines of the era, with emissions reduced by nearly 60%. These numbers would be impressive even by today's standards. Jack studies the data scrolling across the computer screen, marveling at what Victor and his team had achieved 5 decades earlier. The engineering is elegant in its simplicity, revolutionary but implementable. This wasn't pie-in-the-sky theoretical work, but practical innovation designed for mass production. Dr. Chen, how close were you to actual production when the project was terminated? 6 months, maybe less. We had solved all the major engineering challenges. The prototypes were reliable. The manufacturing processes were being finalized. Ford had already allocated factory space for the initial production run. Then the oil crisis hit, and suddenly everything changed. The official explanation was budget cuts, but we all knew that was a convenient fiction. Eleanor approaches with a stack of freshly printed documents, the final version of what they've come to call the Prometheus Disclosure. Curated from Victor's meticulous records, it contains irrefutable evidence of how the technology was deliberately suppressed, complete with names, dates, and documented communications between government officials and oil industry executives. Our contacts in the media are standing by. Once we've completed the demonstration, these files will be released to selected journalists, academics, and officials. The civilian applications will be fully disclosed, with just enough information about the military implications to make it clear we understand what's at stake, but not enough to enable weapons development. Lauren, who has been monitoring the legal front through Patricia Westlake, joins them with an update. Morrison's team is still at the garage. They've been through everything twice now, and they're getting frustrated. The court hearing has been expedited. They're pushing for a final ruling by the end of the week. They know they're running out of time. Once we take this public, no court order in the world will put the genie back in the bottle. Mike Sandoval, who has established a rudimentary security perimeter around the hangar with the help of other Prometheus veterans, approaches with a concerned expression. We've got movement on the access road. 2 vehicles moving slow. Could be nothing, but the timing feels wrong for regular traffic. Jack tenses, his mind racing through possibilities. Morrison, how would he have found us? Electronic surveillance, maybe, or an informant. The Prometheus network is old. Not everyone might share Victor's ideals after all these years. Eleanor's expression hardens. We need to accelerate the timeline. If Morrison has located us, we have hours at most before he arrives with official backing. The demonstration isn't scheduled until tomorrow. The journalists and witnesses won't be here until then. Then we bring it forward. We have everything we need, the vehicle, the documentation, the disclosure files. We can live stream the demonstration and release the files immediately afterward. Morrison can't stop what's already public. Jack considers the options. The plan had been for a carefully choreographed revelation, a public demonstration with credible witnesses, followed by a coordinated release of information through multiple channels to prevent any single point of suppression. Rushing now increases the risk of mistakes, of vulnerabilities that Morrison could exploit. What about the military aspects? We need to be certain we're not revealing anything that could be weaponized. Dr. Chen shakes his head. The critical elements have been removed from the documentation. What remains is enough to validate the multi-fuel system for civilian use, but the hypersonic applications would require years of additional research to reconstruct. We've struck the balance Victor would have wanted. Lauren, who has been studying the approaching vehicles through binoculars, lowers them with a puzzled expression. Dad, I don't think that's Morrison. The lead vehicle is a military Humvee. The second one looks like a government SUV, black tinted windows. Military? That's a new development. Morrison's court order didn't mention military involvement. Mike, whose military experience makes him more attuned to these distinctions, takes the binoculars for a closer look. Army Corps of Engineers markings on the Humvee. That's not a tactical unit. They're technical specialists, not enforcement. Could be here about the property, not us. As the vehicles approach the hangar, Jack makes a rapid decision. Cover the P1. Let's see what they want before we show our hand. Eleanor, Dr. Chen, stay back unless I signal. Lauren, you're with me. Mike, keep an eye on our exit routes, just in case. The vehicles stop outside the hangar, and the doors open to reveal not the enforcement team they feared, but a small group of individuals in civilian clothes, led by an older man in his 70s, whose bearings suggest military background despite his business attire. Mr. Reynolds, I'm General James Harmon, retired. I believe we need to talk about your uncle's legacy. Jack steps forward cautiously, positioning himself between the newcomers and the covered P1. How did you find us, General? And what's your interest in my uncle's property? Victor Medina and I have history, Mr. Reynolds. I was the military liaison to the Prometheus project in 1973 before it was terminated. As for finding you, let's just say that when Daniel Morrison started throwing his weight around, certain monitoring systems were activated. Old contingencies never quite go away in my business. Lauren moves to Jack's side, her expression a mixture of wariness and curiosity. You worked with my grandfather? Were you part of the team that shut the project down? Harmon's eyebrows rise slightly at the familial reference. Your grandfather? I see Victor finally shared that particular secret. His expression sobers. No, Ms. Reynolds, I was not part of the shutdown. In fact, I fought against it, but I was outranked and outmaneuvered. The decision came from levels far above my pay grade at the time. Eleanor emerges from the shadows, recognition dawning on her face. Jimmy Harmon. You were just a major then. You testified before the Internal Review Board that terminating Prometheus was a strategic mistake. Dr. Whitfield, it's been a long time. I'm glad to see you're still fighting the good fight. Harmon gestures to his companions. My colleagues represent various interested parties who have been monitoring the Prometheus situation for decades. We've been waiting for Victor's contingency plan to activate. When it did, we needed to see for ourselves what he had preserved. Jack studies the group more carefully. Besides Harmon, there are 4 others, 2 men and 2 women, all with the same careful assessment in their eyes, the look of people accustomed to making consequential decisions. What exactly do you want, General? The same thing Victor wanted, a controlled release of the Prometheus technology that balances national security concerns with the public good. We've spent 50 years watching America remain trapped in petroleum dependency while other technologies stagnated. The strategic cost has been incalculable. Wars fought, alliances compromised, environmental damage ignored. It's time for a correction. Dr. Chen joins them, his academic reserve giving way to cautious optimism. You're saying you want to help us release the technology, not suppress it further? That's exactly what I'm saying. Morrison represents interests that benefited from the original suppression. Financial empires built on the petroleum economy. But there are other interests, other perspectives within the government. People who've come to believe the decision made in 1973 was a historic mistake that needs to be rectified. Jack remains skeptical. If these people exist, where have they been for the past 50 years? Why didn't they support Victor when he tried to bring this technology forward before? The political climate wasn't ready. The economic entanglements were too deep. And frankly, the evidence wasn't as compelling as what Victor has assembled. Harmon gestures toward the hangar. But now, with climate concerns mounting, energy security a paramount issue, and a new generation of leadership less beholden to fossil fuel interests, the moment Victor waited for may finally have arrived. Lauren, who has been carefully observing the interactions, speaks up. If you really want to help, why come to us directly? Why not just block Morrison through official channels? Because this needs to be a civilian initiative, not a government program. The moment the Pentagon puts its stamp on this technology, the focus will shift to military applications, not civilian benefits. Victor understood that. It's why he preserved the technology privately, outside the system. Eleanor's expression shows she's beginning to be convinced. What exactly are you proposing, General? A partnership. You proceed with your demonstration and disclosure with our tacit support. We ensure that Morrison's legal maneuvers fail without revealing our involvement. When the technology becomes public, we help guide its implementation through regulatory frameworks that prioritize civilian applications while maintaining appropriate security controls on the military aspects. Jack exchanges glances with his team. The offer seems too perfect, too convenient. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Harmon smiles slightly. Besides correcting a 50-year-old mistake, strategic advantage, America regains energy independence. Our military logistics become more resilient without revealing the full capabilities of the technology. And personally, I fulfill a promise I made to Victor decades ago, that if he found a way to preserve Prometheus, I'd help ensure it finally served its intended purpose. Dr. Chen, who has been quiet, suddenly straightens with recognition. You were Victor's inside man. All those years he was tracking down the dispersed prototypes. Someone had to be blocking the counterintelligence reports, redirecting the investigations. That was you. I did what I could from my position. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give Victor the space he needed. He did the heavy lifting, finding the vehicles, preserving the technology, documenting the suppression. I just helped keep the hounds at bay. Jack makes a decision. Show us the P1, Lauren. Let's see if General Harmon recognizes his old friend. The tarp is pulled back to reveal the gleaming prototype in all its restored glory. Harmon approaches it slowly, running a hand along the fender with something like reverence. Prototype 1. The Genesis vehicle. We tested this at White Sands in the summer of '72. Ran it on everything from premium gasoline to homemade moonshine, and it never missed a beat. He looks under the hood, examining the complex multi-fuel system with expert eyes. Victor kept it in perfect condition. The man was always meticulous to a fault. The personal connection, the specific details no outsider could know, begin to convince Jack that Harmon might be genuine. If you're really here to help, then help us understand what we're facing. What will Morrison do next? How far will he go to stop us? Harmon's expression turns serious. Morrison isn't just protecting corporate interests. He's protecting his father's legacy. William Morrison was the architect of the Prometheus suppression. He orchestrated the shutdown, arranged for the prototypes to be dispersed and forgotten, buried the research so deep that it effectively ceased to exist. Daniel has spent his career defending that decision, convincing himself it was necessary for national security. So this is personal for him, deeply personal. In his mind, exposing the truth about Prometheus would destroy his father's reputation, reveal him as someone who sacrificed American interests for corporate profit. Daniel can't allow that, regardless of the potential benefits the technology might bring. Lauren, ever practical, focuses on the immediate threat. The court hearing is in 3 days. If Morrison gets a favorable ruling, he'll have legal authority to seize everything, not just what's at the garage, but potentially anything related to Prometheus, including what we have here. Which is why we need to move quickly. Your demonstration needs to happen before that ruling. Once the technology is public, the legal questions become moot. Jack considers the revised timeline. We were planning to live stream the demonstration tomorrow, with a coordinated release of the documentation immediately afterward. Make it today. My people can help secure the transmission against interference. Ensure it reaches the intended audience regardless of any attempts to block it. The decision crystallizes in Jack's mind. They've come too far to hesitate now. With Morrison closing in legally and Harmon offering unexpected support, the moment of truth has arrived. All right, we accelerate to today. Dr. Chen, prep the P1 for full demonstration. Eleanor, finalize the documentation package and alert your media contacts. Lauren, set up the live stream equipment. Mike, coordinate security with General Harmon's team. We go live in 2 hours. The next 120 minutes pass in a blur of focused activity. The P1 is positioned on the tarmac outside the hangar, fueling systems prepared with 3 distinct energy sources for the demonstration. Camera equipment is arranged to capture every aspect of the vehicle's performance, with secure uplinks established through channels Harmon's team provides. Eleanor's network of journalists, academics, and officials receives encrypted notifications about the impending demonstration, along with secure access credentials for the live stream. The Prometheus disclosure documents are prepared for simultaneous release through multiple redundant channels, ensuring no single point of failure. As they reach the final countdown, Jack takes a moment alone with Lauren beside the P1. This vehicle, this moment, represents the culmination of Victor's life's work, and now their family legacy. Your grandfather would be proud to see this day. Not just the technology finally coming to light, but you continuing his work. You have his gift, Lauren, his way of seeing beyond the obvious to what's possible. I wish I'd known him, really known him, not just as the quiet uncle who showed up at holidays. There's so much I would have asked him about engineering, about Mom, about everything. We'll honor him by finishing what he started. That's what matters now. As they prepare for the demonstration, an urgent call comes in from Patricia Westlake. Jack, Morrison's on the move. He's filed an emergency injunction claiming imminent national security risk. He's got federal agents mobilizing. They could be heading your way right now. How did he know where to look? I don't know, but he's moving fast. Whatever you're planning, do it now. Jack relays the warning to the team. Harmon immediately dispatches 2 of his people to monitor the approach roads, while the rest accelerate final preparations. We've got maybe 30 minutes before they arrive. It's now or never. The live stream begins with Jack standing beside the P1, addressing an invisible audience of scientists, journalists, and officials who will shape how this revelation enters the public consciousness. What you're about to witness represents 50 years of suppressed American innovation. The Prometheus Project, developed in the early 1970s, created technology that could have freed our nation from petroleum dependency before the oil crisis ever began. Instead, it was deliberately buried to protect entrenched financial interests at the expense of our national security, our environment, and our economic independence. The demonstration proceeds with methodical precision. The P1's engine is started on conventional gasoline, its performance metrics displayed in real time on screens visible to the cameras. Then comes the first transition. Without stopping the engine, the fuel system is switched to pure ethanol. The engine note changes slightly, but performance remains constant as the adaptive systems compensate for the different energy density and combustion characteristics. This is the revolutionary breakthrough, an engine that automatically adapts to whatever fuel is available, maintaining performance and efficiency regardless of the energy source. In 1973, this technology could have transformed America's relationship with foreign oil suppliers. Today, it could accelerate our transition to renewable fuels while maintaining the performance consumers expect. The final demonstration is the most dramatic. A switch to a synthetic fuel derived from coal using a process Victor had refined over decades. The P1 accepts this radical departure from petroleum without hesitation, its variable compression system adjusting in real time to optimize combustion. The implications extend beyond personal transportation. This technology could transform trucking, shipping, air travel, and power generation, any application currently dependent on petroleum-based fuels. And because it works with existing infrastructure, the transition could begin immediately without waiting decades for a complete system replacement. As Jack concludes the technical demonstration, Eleanor initiates the coordinated release of the Prometheus disclosure documents. Across the country, selected journalists receive comprehensive evidence of how and why the technology was suppressed, complete with authenticated communications between government officials and oil industry executives dating back to 1973. The full documentation, including detailed technical specifications for civilian applications, is being made public at this moment. We invite independent verification of all claims and welcome collaboration on implementing this technology for the public good. Just as they complete the transmission, Mike Sandoval's voice comes through on the radio. Multiple vehicles approaching from the South Access Road. Federal agents, at least 3 vehicles. ETA 5 minutes. Harmon moves quickly. My people will delay them, create some confusion about jurisdiction. You need to move the P1 now. Once they've seen it in operation, they'll have grounds for seizure under national security provisions. Jack hesitates. Run again? For how long? We've made the technology public. Isn't that enough? The demonstration is public, yes, but the working prototype still represents classified technology in their eyes. They could still suppress the physical evidence, create enough doubt to undermine what you've revealed. Lauren has been monitoring the live stream metrics. Dad, we're getting confirmation receipts from 87% of our primary targets. The documentation has been downloaded and acknowledged. It's out there now, beyond anyone's ability to completely suppress. Eleanor joins them, her expression reflecting both triumph and concern. The core goal has been achieved. The technology is public. But Jack, Morrison won't stop. As long as you possess physical evidence of the Prometheus project, he'll pursue you with every resource at his disposal. Jack makes a decisive calculation. Then we give him what he wants. What? Give up the P1 after everything we've done to preserve it? Not give up. Strategically surrender the hardware while ensuring the knowledge remains free. The prototype has served its purpose. It's proven the technology works exactly as claimed. The detailed specifications are now public, allowing any competent engineer to reproduce the results. The physical vehicle is just evidence of a crime that's already been exposed. Dr. Chen understands immediately. A brilliant compromise. Let them have the artifact while we keep the legacy alive through the released knowledge. Victor would approve of the elegant simplicity. As federal vehicles appear at the edge of the property, Jack turns to Harmon. Will your people continue to protect the knowledge even if we surrender the prototype? That was always the plan. The technology matters, not the specific hardware. My colleagues are already establishing channels to integrate the civilian applications into existing research programs, ensuring it can't be reburied. Lauren looks troubled. But the P1 is Grandpa Victor's masterpiece. Giving it up feels like surrendering part of our heritage. Jack places a hand on his daughter's shoulder. The real heritage isn't the car, Lauren. It's the innovation, the determination to find a better way despite powerful opposition. That's what Victor preserved, and that's what we've now passed on to the world. As federal agents approach, led by a grim-faced Daniel Morrison, Jack steps forward to meet them. The confrontation that follows is tense but controlled. Morrison brandishing legal documents, Jack responding with calm assertion of what has already been accomplished. The technology is public, Morrison. Scientists across the country are already validating our claims. You can take the prototype, but you can't take back the knowledge. Morrison's composure cracks, revealing the personal stake beneath his professional veneer. You have no idea what you've done. My father made a necessary decision in 1973. He protected this country from technologies we weren't ready to control. He protected oil company profits at the expense of American independence. That's what the evidence shows, and that's what history will remember. For a moment, Morrison seems ready to escalate beyond legal measures. Then, with visible effort, he regains control. Take the prototype and all related components into custody. Full inventory, secure transport, classified handling protocols. As federal agents begin securing the P1, Morrison approaches Jack with unexpected candor. This isn't over, Reynolds. The courts will determine ultimate ownership of the Prometheus materials. And when they do, you'll learn that some secrets exist for good reasons. No more secrets, Morrison. That's the point. Whatever happens next will happen in the open, with full public awareness. The era of burying innovations that threaten established interests is over. The P1 is carefully loaded onto a transport vehicle, Morrison personally supervising every detail of the operation. As the federal convoy prepares to depart, Jack, Lauren, Eleanor, and Dr. Chen watch with mixed emotions. The culmination of their efforts disappearing down the access road, but the knowledge it represents now spreading beyond anyone's ability to contain. What now? Lauren asks, watching the dust settle on the empty tarmac. Now we defend what we've released. Morrison will try to discredit the technology, claim it was theoretical rather than practical, suggest the demonstration was somehow faked. We need to support the independent researchers who are already beginning to validate our claims. Eleanor's phone chimes with incoming messages. It's starting already. 3 university engineering departments are announcing projects to replicate the multi-fuel system based on our released specifications. A major automotive manufacturer is acknowledging they had similar research underway, but faced regulatory hurdles they now expect to overcome. As they return to the hangar to gather their materials, Lauren discovers something Victor had hidden inside the P1's door panel, a small data drive that had escaped the federal agent's inventory. On it, they find a video message recorded shortly before his death, addressed to my family rather than just to Jack. Victor's face appears on the screen, older and more worn than in the previous recording, but with the same intensity in his eyes. If you're seeing this message, then the Prometheus technology has finally found its way into the light. Whatever happens next, whether it's embraced or resisted, celebrated or attacked, know that you've accomplished what I couldn't in my lifetime. His expression softens, becoming more personal. Lauren, my granddaughter, I've watched you grow from a distance, seen your mother's intuition and your father's determination combine in you. The technical gifts you've inherited aren't just genetic accident. They're the culmination of generations of Medina engineers trying to make the world better through innovation. That legacy now continues through you. Jack, my son, through marriage if not blood, thank you for seeing this through. I chose you because I recognized in you something rare. An engineer who understands that technology without ethics is meaningless. The path forward will be difficult. Powerful interests will resist change, try to undermine what you've revealed. Stand firm. The truth is now your strongest ally. Victor's final words resonate with unexpected emotion. Diana would be proud of you both. She had the same fire, the same refusal to accept artificial limitations. When you restore that Pontiac GTO, and I know you will, think of it as more than just preserving a classic car. It's continuing a family tradition of looking beyond what is to what could be. The message ends, leaving them in silence, broken only by the distant sound of aircraft passing overhead. Jack feels a complex mixture of accomplishment and loss. The mission completed, but at the cost of the physical legacy Victor had preserved for decades. He knew this would happen, Lauren says quietly. He knew we might have to sacrifice the prototype to free the knowledge. That's why he left this message separated from everything else. Victor always played the long game, Eleanor confirms. Even when we were young engineers, he could see further ahead than the rest of us. He wasn't just preserving technology. He was preserving hope for a different future. One decision at a time, waiting for the right moment. Over the following weeks, the public reaction to the Prometheus revelation unfolds exactly as Victor might have predicted. Initial skepticism gives way to growing validation as independent researchers confirm the technology's viability. Morrison's attempts to discredit the demonstration falter in the face of mounting evidence. The legal battle continues, with Patricia Westlake defending Jack's inheritance rights against government claims of classified technology. But with each passing day, the distinction becomes less relevant. The knowledge has spread too widely to be recaptured, with multiple teams now developing their own implementations of the multi-fuel system. 1 month after the demonstration, Jack and Lauren stand in their garage, the original building Victor had left them, now secured against further intrusion. In the center sits the 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge, partially disassembled as they begin the restoration Victor had mentioned in his final message. I've been thinking about what comes next, Lauren says, carefully cleaning a valve cover with her mother's old tools. Grandpa Victor preserved the past to change the future. Maybe that's our job now, not just restoring old cars, but restoring lost possibilities. Jack nods, understanding her meaning. A restoration business with a difference, focusing on vehicles that represented technological turning points, innovations that were abandoned for reasons beyond engineering limitations. Exactly. Starting with this GTO, but not ending there. We could document everything, create a kind of living museum of automotive paths not taken. Not just for collectors, but for students, researchers, people looking for inspiration in what used to be possible. Jack sees in his daughter's enthusiasm the same spark that had driven Victor for decades. Not just nostalgia for classic cars, but a deeper appreciation for innovation that transcends its era. The cars themselves are artifacts, but the engineering principles they embody are timeless. Victor would like that idea, using the past to inspire the future, just as he did. As they continue working on the GTO, Jack reflects on how dramatically their lives have changed in the weeks since they first uncovered the Shelby in Victor's garage. From unemployed engineer and disillusioned teenager to guardians of a technological legacy that could transform America's energy future. The financial security the collection provides is significant, but the sense of purpose it has given them is immeasurable. The engine block of the GTO gleams under the workshop lights as they carefully disassemble it for restoration. Lauren pauses, holding a component with the same reverence Victor might have shown. Dad, do you think we'll ever get the P1 back? Legally, I mean. I don't know. Morrison's team is fighting hard to maintain control, but in a way it doesn't matter anymore. The prototype served its purpose. It proved the technology was real, viable, and practical. What happens now is more important than who owns the original hardware. Lauren nods, understanding. It's like Grandpa Victor said in his message. It's not about preserving things, it's about preserving possibilities. As they return to their work, the radio announces another university team has successfully replicated the Prometheus multi-fuel system, with test results exceeding even the claims made during the original demonstration. Jack and Lauren exchange a smile of shared satisfaction, knowing that whatever happens next, Victor's 50-year mission has finally been completed. The legacy of American steel continues, not as museum pieces gathering dust, but as living inspiration for a new generation of engineers looking beyond what is to what could be, just as Victor would have wanted. 6 months after the Prometheus revelation, the legal battle over Victor's collection reaches an unexpected resolution. The court rules that while the prototype P1 must remain in government custody due to legitimate national security concerns, the remaining vehicles and documentation in Victor's collection rightfully belong to Jack as the legal heir. A compromise that honors both national interests and individual rights. The autumn leaves have turned to winter snow by the time Jack and Lauren complete the restoration of the Pontiac GTO Judge. Its carousel red paint gleams under the workshop lights as they make final adjustments to the engine Victor had so carefully preserved. Not just a restoration to original specifications, but an integration of certain Prometheus principles that improve efficiency while maintaining the raw power that defined the muscle car era. Morrison, whose crusade against the Prometheus technology has gradually transformed into reluctant cooperation, visits the garage on a cold December afternoon. The confrontation Lauren expected never materializes. Instead, the energy executive brings documents his father had kept, personal notes that reveal a more complex picture than the corporate villain they had imagined. My father wasn't proud of what happened to Prometheus. His private journals show he fought for a middle path, controlled development rather than complete suppression. He lost that fight to others with less nuanced views. I thought you should know that history is rarely as black and white as we want it to be. Jack accepts the documents with the respect due to difficult truths. Victor used to say that engineering was about finding the balance between what's possible and what's responsible. Sounds like your father understood that too, even if the system didn't allow for such subtlety. They were both patriots in their own way. Different visions of what would best serve America's interests, but the same underlying commitment. I've come to believe they would have found common ground if circumstances had been different. The Reynolds Automotive Heritage Foundation opens the following spring, housed in Victor's renovated garage. Not just a museum of classic cars, but an educational center that documents the complex interplay between innovation, economics, and national policy. General Harmon, now a vocal advocate for technological transparency, speaks at the opening ceremony. What we celebrate today isn't just mechanical ingenuity, but moral courage. Victor Medina and others like him understood that progress doesn't always follow a straight line. Sometimes it requires individuals who preserve what institutions abandon, who maintain faith in possibilities others have discarded. The foundation becomes a gathering place for veterans of America's technological battlefields, engineers from abandoned aerospace projects, energy researchers whose work was sidelined during shifting policy eras, automotive innovators whose concepts were ahead of their time. Their stories form a tapestry of American ingenuity that transcends any single company or government agency. Visitors leave understanding that innovation isn't just about breakthrough moments, but about persistence through setbacks and the courage to question established limitations. Lauren, now studying automotive engineering at university, leads technical workshops where students learn from both the triumphs and failures of the past. Eleanor Whitfield, in her 80s but still sharp as ever, becomes a regular presence at the foundation, sharing first-hand accounts of the Prometheus era with a perspective tempered by decades of reflection. We weren't perfect. We made mistakes in how we approached the project, overreached in some areas, miscalculated in others, but we believed in what America could be at its best: innovative, independent, forward-thinking. That belief is what Victor preserved more carefully than any engine or chassis. As for the P-1 prototype, it finds a fitting home neither in a museum nor a government warehouse, but at the Naval Research Laboratory, where engineering students from across the country can study its revolutionary design under appropriate security protocols. The military applications remain classified, but the civilian technology flourishes in the open, spurring a renaissance in American energy innovation. On the one-year anniversary of their first discovery, in Victor's garage, Jack and Lauren take the restored GTO for a drive along the coast, its distinctive rumble turning heads as they pass. The car represents something beyond its collector value now, a tangible link between generations, between what was lost and what might yet be recovered. Grandpa Victor used to say that America's greatest strength wasn't its military or its economy, but its capacity for renewal, the ability to learn from mistakes and find a better path forward. The road stretches before them, curving along the shoreline toward a horizon bright with possibility. Not the end of a journey, but the continuation of one that began decades earlier with an engineer who refused to accept that some innovations were too disruptive to pursue. A legacy of American steel, American ingenuity, and American perseverance. Qualities that transcend any single era or technology that form the foundation for whatever challenges the future might bring.